We also have Mondli Gungubela, in fact, talking about the state of SOE, so you don't want to miss that. And today, by the way, there's one other one. There's Professor Stephen Friedman will talk about the absence, and listen to this one, the absence of a formidable, the key word is formidable, the absence of a formidable left-wing party in South Africa weakens our democracy. I wonder what you make of that. We'll talk to him. Now, you may also know, being a Thursday today, we focus on the elections big time, and today, in what we now call the election monitor, we keep an eye on the manifesto and the hopes and the aspirations and the dreams of the UDM. So I'll chat to General Bantu Holomisa after 5 o'clock. We got him for an hour. It means we've got you for an hour to connect with him and engage him. Do not miss that. I wonder what's the one question you may want to ask him. In fact, you can tell me right away if you have a specific question that you would ask him, if you could put it to him, and you can WhatsApp in text form 061 410 4107. You got that? 061 410 4107. And also, you could call in, not quite now, but when you get a chance, 086 000 2032. I tell you what, I had a chat with Temba, my producer. And you know, what did I say about producers? Producers are the coaches of the team and the presenters, the captain, something along that line. So I had a chat with my coach. And I said, Temba, when last year we had load shedding nationwide, and we sort of tried to work it out. I said, hold it, I think it was like the day before the long weekend. So can you count? I think it's about 8 days, maybe 9 days without load shedding. So here's the question to you: how are you coping? How are you coping without load shedding? And don't tell me, Ashraf, as you talk, now you'll see we'll go to stage 6. But I'm asking you, how are you coping? Do you not find it strange? Because like I'll tell you what, every day when I get home, I have a chat with my wife, and it's like, Jamila, you know what? Where are we? What's the load shedding plan tonight, overnight, so we can plan accordingly, right? And in the moment, it's like, Ashraf, no load shedding. Ashraf, no load shedding. Every day, no load shedding. So the question is, how are you coping without load shedding? It's a relative freedom that we have, and long may that continue. Yeah, but don't just say, I said it, now I'm going to spoil it. I'm just telling you where we are on this issue. All right, you can comment about that in terms of you have a view. And by the way, do not forget this. Love the pictures many of you have been sending all throughout the last 2 days. This being day 3 for me on the show called The National Pulse. And yes, it's absolutely a show. Fingers on the pulse. We try and reflect exactly what you feel about the country and what the actual state of the country is. You know, what's the heartbeat of the nation? Now, you also know, if you're listening in, you have many options, so you can tell your friends about it. You can listen live on radio from 104 to 107 nationwide, but you have other options too. You can also listen via streaming live. That's audio streaming live. Just go to the SAFM website. You can pick it up immediately, or other apps that allow that option, but the streaming live through the website is great. But also, if you go to us on the X platform, right, and just find the tweets on the X platform, you'll see it, SAFM Radio, which will also pick out, you can actually watch me presenting, call it radio, watching radio. What a strange world we live in, isn't it? You have that option too. And talking about options, you can connect and tweet on the X platform anytime. Do use the hashtag The National Pulse, and you can tag SAFM Radio and do tag me. Now, I just wonder what you make about the developments regarding now the former Speaker of the National Assembly, Nosiviwe Mapisa Nqakula. She's been granted 50,000 rands bail, but there's more than that than just the bail, isn't it? There has to be more. So let's find out from someone who certainly has a courtroom view of what has happened. Kenny Mapanga from the SABC News reporter, in fact. Kenny, appreciate your time and welcome, talking to me for the first time here on the National Pulse.
Good afternoon to you, Ashraf, and to the listeners. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. So what is the National Pulse like regarding someone no less important than a significant person as the former Speaker of the National Assembly today?
Well, Ashraf, I can confirm that at least today, what you did see was that the Criminal Procedure Act was followed to the T. She is facing 12 counts of corruption and 1 count of money laundering, which placed her in the Schedule 5 of the offences. So essentially what that did is it placed the burden on her to demonstrate to the lower court the circumstances or whether it is actually in the interest of justice for her to be released on bail. Now, they look at various factors, Ashraf. They look at questions of whether is she a flight risk, if she's released on bail because she interfere with witnesses. They also look at your age, health, seniority, factors such as that. And overall, after presenting her arguments and also her conduct, at least after the interdict failed in the Gauteng High Court, was that she did hand herself over and she did cooperate with the process. So the NTA did not oppose bail. So based on some of these factors that we are hearing of now, the court was satisfied that it is actually in the interest of justice to release her on bail. Bail was set at 50,000, and some of those conditions include that she had to surrender her passport. She'll have to do that by Monday, the 8th of April. Of course, she won't be able to apply for another passport pending the finalization of this matter. And then, of course, she can't interfere with the witnesses when this matter is expected to go to trial, when that process kicks off.
No, I do understand, and I heard a bit of the recording on the way to studios here at SAFM, and if I heard correctly, the attorneys representing the prosecution, right, they were very, very complimentary with the defense attorneys, and actually even make that point of saying how exemplary they've been. I mean, what do you make of that?
Well, they've been quite courteous, and this is an argument that we've discussed, seeing how this matter has played out. I don't know if this would be afforded to all citizens. We see citizens going through the criminal justice system every day. We've never seen a matter where you are able to negotiate or set a timetable or, discuss how you'll be handing yourself over, when you'll be handing yourself over. Usually in criminal matters, because that role is so overwhelming, usually you see someone get arrested, they're brought to the court within 48 hours. Sometimes the matter is postponed for bail, and you see quite a lengthy period before they're able to get released on bail, if they are released on bail. So it's quite evident or justified for members of the public to view this and think, well, is there possibly special treatment in this matter?
And you think what? Yes?
Well, that's for the public to determine.
Yeah, but
I would like to stick to the facts as to what happened in court this morning.
I can imagine, yeah. Just to confirm that, then, was the bail, I understand the bail was not challenged, right? Have I got it right? The bail application?
Yes, bail was not opposed by the NPA for various reasons, including the fact that she's of a senior age, her health, and the fact that following the Gauteng High Court ruling, which struck that application for an interdict off the roll, she has been cooperating with the various authorities. So when you look at the different grounds upon which bail can be denied, she has actually been cooperating according to the NPA, and they don't view her as a flight risk and don't think it's necessary for her to be placed in custody.
Yeah, I certainly heard that part where the prosecution said they don't see a flight risk, which is, I think, very, very interesting indeed. What about, I understand from the statement made, read out on behalf of the former Speaker of the National Assembly, something was alluded to the ANC's chief whip and some positions about leaked information. I mean, you want to tell me about that?
Well, in her affidavit, she was detailing how she found out about the matter. So she was listing various media reports that she has seen about the matter. You may have seen a recent media report that spoke of WhatsApp and dealt with the chief whip and places the chief whip allegedly at the center of that. So it was in that affidavit and in that context upon which she was mentioning that media report. However, when we did ask her spokesperson as to what exactly was she trying to convey in revealing that information in her bail affidavit, and her spokesperson chose not to elaborate further on what this means. But I'm sure at the time she was trying to address this issue of the step-aside resolution and what it would have meant for her to have been charged had she not resigned from her position as Speaker of the National Assembly.
Yeah, so I mean, okay, so again, much interest around that last statement, or is it a case of like it is just a formality? I mean, do we look much into that?
Well, it might possibly come up in the trial. Remember, when you deal with bail, you're only dealing with grounds upon which the interest of justice permits your release on bail. It's actually not wise to go into the merits of the case and whether you think the case is motivated by an ulterior purpose. That is something that you can deal with once you get to the trial. I'm sure that is an issue, or the question of ulterior purpose is an issue that may be raised as a defense when that matter gets transferred to trial. But it's still the early stages. It's still in the lower court. We expect it to return in June, and at that point there should be some partial disclosure in this matter, and soon after that you probably could expect that that matter would be heading, or transferred rather, to the Superior Court for trial.
And lastly, what's the next thing you'd be looking out for now?
Apologies, Asha?
What's the next thing, or the next step, significant step on this journey regarding the former speaker that you'd be looking out for now?
Well, the only next step is for her to appear again in court, which will only happen in June. And then after that, once that is finalized, we can expect that the case will start to see some movement in a significant way, and that it can head to trial. But as of now, you're just ironing out those logistics. And then, of course, another important factor, before I forget, the NPA has actually revealed, when it was addressing the strength of its case, that it intends to add a second accused to this matter. So you can expect that to happen quite soon. They haven't committed to a date or elaborated further on the details, but it seems that the former speaker isn't the only person in this matter, and we could expect a second accused soon.
And I gather you're not going to speculate on who that second person is, because you only deal with the facts, but it doesn't stop all of us speculating on who that second person may well be. Kenny Mapanga, thank you for your time. Much appreciated.
Thank you for having me.
There we are, Kenny Mapanga, the SABC News reporter. So there you are. I think that's a significant one. A second person will be added to this charge sheet. So who would be that second nameless person at this point in time that will be added on soon, as per the NPA? You have an opinion on that, you can tell me. 086 000 2032. But as always, WhatsApp, you can text or voice note me. 0614 104 107. 0614 104 107. Certainly a good way to get your fingers on the national pulse, as we do right now. We can talk about Zimbabwe, and they have huge issues around famine and the fallout of that right after this.
Gautrain is for the legends who make moves to save and pay from as little as 45 Rand from Pretoria to Midrand. It's for our clever who turn 5-liter bottles into workout dumbbells. And for the slim oaks who bring a home-cooked scuff team to work every day. So when it comes to travel, make moves that save and pay from as little as 45 Rand from Pretoria to Midrand Station. Gautrain, for people on the move.
Aston Villa have found comfort on the top half, and they want maximum points to retain their decent position.
Put it back, and this time, Zaniolo is on! The equaliser belongs to Aston Villa!
Yet the Bees want to cause havoc and deprive the Villains by registering an away victory.
Wissart tried one of them in the first half, he's finished it in the second, and Brentford have turned this round.
This is the Premier League. Catch the exciting clash between Aston Villa FC and Brentford FC on Saturday, 6 April at 3 p.m. Live on SABC3. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
Ashraf Garda on SAFM.
So there's an issue around Zimbabwe and the impact that they've had with regard to the lack of rain induced by the El Nino global weather patterns. You know, I mean, we've had already certainly in South Africa the warmest, I think, few months on record, but certainly for many parts of the world. So there's been this complete change of weather patterns, and the problem is not just the inconvenience of either too hot or too cold or too wet or not so wet, but what it means in terms of food security, isn't it? So Zimbabwe, well, their president, Emmerson Mnangagwa, has declared a national disaster. Because of just that, let's try and understand what that really means to the people of that nation with Dr. Ibo Mandaza, who's a Zimbabwean academic, author and publisher. Dr. Mandaza, appreciate your time. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Right, so what was said, firstly, why was the national disaster being pronounced by Zimbabwe's president?
I think it's belated, given that most countries in the region have already declared that it's a disaster. It's a regional disaster. The drought, the impact of the drought is sitting squarely on Zimbabwe, although the whole region is affected. So Zimbabwe, which is the most affected in my view, was the last to declare a national disaster.
How
Zambia having done so 2 weeks ago, and Malawi last week.
Okay, and you're saying belated, like 2-3 weeks. Does it make a significant difference in terms of, the impact of what a national disaster means to the people of Zimbabwe?
No, it betrays a kind of denialism. Zimbabwe is known for that, for denying the reality and trying to put up a show that things are better than what they are.
Yeah.
So now the announcement is being made against the backdrop of all kinds of things happening, currency crisis, revelations that our reserves are only $580 million, and that our import cover is hardly 3 weeks, when you require at least 6 months import cover to have a stable currency and to have a fairly resistant economy. So we're in a mess, to put it mildly. Yep.
And your personal thoughts about the actual impact already on the drought on the people of Zimbabwe? Anecdotally,
it's
enormous.
As you see? It's enormous. It's enormous. I mean, the last I remember was 1992, when the last rains come normally in November, as in South Africa, November to April. Mm-hmm. The last rains in December 1992 was on the 7th of December, and there were no rains. This time, what has happened, the rains came quite early, quite late December, and by January it was gone. There was no rain at all in February and March. So it's a sad sight. I mean, I just come from Kariba, and the whole highway, the farm, the commercial and communal farms, the maize has simply wilted. There'll be no harvest, hardly, if any.
Sure. I mean, already that's a country and a people already struggling, so this exacerbates this even worse. I mean, one can just imagine what that means, right? I would take it, on that basis, just in terms of understanding. We call this show the National Pulse. I could put the same question to you. This must be incredibly demoralizing in terms of understanding the national pulse of Zimbabwe, isn't it?
It's incredible. I mean, it's just like as the anecdotal saying, it never rains, it pours. Yeah. Ironically, when we have a drought. I mean, things just coming to a head in terms of the economic crisis facing us, not to mention the political crisis behind which the economic crisis has become exacerbated.
Now,
we're in a mess. We are in trouble.
Now, normally, when any president or head of state of a nation declares a national disaster, then what would follow, is to understand the gravity of a situation, but what follows naturally then would be relief. Would relief follow this pronouncement or this announcement?
Well, it means that, I mean, as has happened in the past, that we have to mobilize the international community. In previous years, we are lucky that Zambia or South Africa would have had a good season. Now, Zambia has banned all exports of maize. South Africa, we don't know yet what the final figures will be. So it means that the maize imports will have to come from far afield, hence the cost, increased cost. And when we also discover that there be no reserves at all, we have been given false information on the previous harvest. There was a claim that 20,000 hectares of maize was undercrop, when hardly 2,000 was undercrop the previous season. And the granaries are empty, simple.
And normally, in many countries, when you have a problem like this and you have famine, besides the international aid, it also ensures very often that the government of a country becomes very vulnerable because citizens are incredibly dissatisfied, disillusioned, and often would revolt, whether it's through the polls or through just, taking to the streets with a sense of civic or civil activism. And do you get a sense that may happen or not?
No, conversely, when a government, such as the government is in Zimbabwe, a very vulnerable government, the tendency is to underestimate the gravity of the drought and claim that all is under control. And this is the narrative that we're having at the moment.
Okay, well,
yes, that's the narrative. Yeah.
Well, let's see what happens. Is there anything else you want to tell us, like in 20 seconds, that you think is really important to bring to our attention?
Yeah, I hope that there will be some regional mobilization for the people of the region as a whole, who are really going to be very stressed this year.
I'm sure.
But yes.
Stress and distress. Let's leave it at that. Thank you for your time, Dr. Ibo Mandaza. Not good news here in terms of the drought in Zimbabwe. Now a declaration of state of emergency, not just in state of disaster in this case here, not just in Zimbabwe, but also in neighboring countries that form part of SADC, and that's all our neighbors. In fact, if you have a thought on that, let me know. There's a couple of sound bites I can play. Let's do that now.
Yes, Ashraf, Flores here from the Western Cape, yeah. And also the argument with regards to she handed herself over. Yes, she only did that after her urgent application has been withheld. And yeah, it's just nonsense, man, that old people can get away. So if some ordinary old person goes and steals a bread or do something, he cannot argue that he's ill. He cannot go to court because he has hypertension. They're going to somehow punish him. Yeah, it's absolutely nonsensical, man.
Okay.
I'm so angry, but yeah, what can I do? Have a good job.
Right, there we are. Thanks for that contribution. You're so angry. But I mean, let's be fair. She hasn't gotten away with anything. She just lost the job as the Speaker of the National Assembly. Can you imagine the prestige around that? She's also resigned, I understand, from the ANC and of course, as an MP. So she actually hasn't gotten away from things at all. And the fact that she's out on bail doesn't mean that she's not going to stand trial. That will take its course, isn't it? So there are huge implications anyway with regards to the former Speaker of the National Assembly, Nosiviwe Mapisa Nqakula, and I think just what's happened today or yesterday is really day one of an unfolding story there. Let's get the news headlines now. It's 3:30. Years and Musa.
Good afternoon. Thanks, Ashraf. In the headlines, a report into the death of pupil Latoya Hamilton states the Large School Queenswood management team and educators compromised on the safety of the learner. The grade 7 learner from the Pretoria school lost life in January this year during a school leadership camp in Olifantsfontein. Former National Assembly Speaker Nosiviwe Mapisa Nqakula has been granted 50,000 rand bail. Magistrate Anna Oosthuizen says it's in the interest of justice that the former speaker be released on bail. And authorities in Ukraine's second largest city, Kharkiv, says 4 people were killed and a dozen injured in repeated Russian drone attacks. The drone struck residential buildings and an energy facility in the surrounding region yesterday. I'll have details on these and other stories at 4.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Very good afternoon. The R21 from Pretoria down to the airport. This is the latest. It looks slow coming into the Clayville roadworks. After that, it's okay. There's a second set of roadworks down by the Benoni exit, but that not having the impact like it had this time yesterday. So just the one queue at this stage, approaching Oliphants on your way towards the airport, but we'll keep full eyes on that. Broken down vehicle on the N1 North just after Winnie Mandela. There's a little bit of slow-moving traffic on your way to Rivonia Road. And a crash on the R24 westbound just by the N12 highway merger coming through Edenvale on your way to Galudi's. It is slow today. Durban's N2 jam-packing both ways between Spaghetti Junction and Umgeni Road. Northbound very slow up through the roadworks towards Umgeni Road, and southbound a breakdown in the construction zone going south into Spaghetti Junction. So that's heavy. Cape Town, there's been a crash on the M3 inbound at Hospital Bend. So the run-in from Newlands is very slow, particularly slow coming up past the UCT area in towards Hospital Bend on the M3, and at the same time there's been a collision on the N2 outbound at the M5 highway, and that's putting some real traffic pressure on Nelson Mandela Boulevard leaving the city centre. The N2's heavily backed out from the central area through Hospital Bend and out towards the crash at that M5 highway exit. With your traffic updates, I'm Rob Byrne.
This is SAFM Sports with Doming Kapele.
Let's talk sport, and sadly you're starting with not good news. I mean, horrific news, isn't it?
Horrific news indeed. A very good afternoon to you. Well, tributes have continued to pour in for Kaizer Chiefs defender Luke Fleers, who tragically lost his life yesterday during a hijack incident. According to SAPS spokesperson Mavela Masondo, two armed suspects approached Fleers and instructed him to get out of his car before shooting him. And despite being rushed to the hospital, he was pronounced dead upon arrival. And clubs including the likes of Orlando Pirates, TS Galaxy, Marumo Gallants, Stellenbosch FC and SuperSport United have extended their words of comfort on social media, with the Premier Soccer League also saying that a moment of silence will be observed in the DStv Premiership, Motsepe Foundation and Diski Challenge this weekend to pay tribute to the defender. Kaizer Chiefs communications manager Vina Maposa says that the 24-year-old was a jolly person.
At this stage, we reeling and coming to terms with this matter. At the same time, hoping that the law enforcers will deal with the matter accordingly, and the perpetrators will be caught and brought to book. We are at this stage remembering, Luke as a jolly member of the club. He's been a wonderful part of the team, bringing joy in the dressing room. Was yet to make an appearance on the pitch, but has sat on the bench recently. And we were looking at great things to happen with Luke in the club at the age of 24, having played for other clubs as well, including SuperSport United, and having made national team colours at the Olympics. This is a potential that is taken too soon from us.
Our condolences to the club, the family and friends as a whole. Then the SA Under-17 men's team have been invited to Santiago de Cali in Colombia to play 2 international friendly matches as they continue with preparations for the upcoming COSAFA Under-17 Championships and the 2025 AFCON qualifiers. Amajimbos will report for camp next week Wednesday, and they're expected to depart for Colombia on Saturday ahead of matches scheduled for the 17th and the 20th of April. In rugby, the Springbok Sevens team face one of their toughest tasks at a tournament that traditionally hasn't been their best. That's the Hong Kong Sevens this weekend. And other than still not qualifying for the Olympics, they face a repage tournament for the final spot for Paris in May. The Blitzboks finished 11th in the Los Angeles one, their lowest finish in a number of seasons, prompting action from SA Rugby. Then in cricket, the Dolphins head into the last part of the CSA T20 Challenge with some big matches ahead starting on Friday, and they face the Lions at the Wanderers. Currently sitting in 4th on the table, the Dolphins can make big strides towards that home semi-final should they claim a few more wins in the second half of the tournament. And with the match tomorrow and Sunday, the Dolphins will hope to bag 2 wins, which will move them up the table into a position of strength. On Sunday, they take on the Dragons. Meanwhile, Proteas pacer Kagiso Rabada has slammed Cricket South Africa's mix-up in February, saying that it was unacceptable that the country's top cricketers did not have a say in their participation in the Proteas tour of New Zealand. South Africa had sent a second-string team led by Neil Brand that suffered a 2-0 sweep in the Test series against the Black Caps after Rabada and the rest of top South African cricketers were busy playing the second season of SA20. Meanwhile, the 28-year-old has hailed BCCI for incentivizing the players for playing more test matches throughout the year. Ending things off with motorsport, Lewis Hamilton feels that retired F1 world champion Sebastian Vettel is a great option to replace him at Mercedes. The 7-time world champion is moving to Ferrari next season, leaving big shoes to be filled at a team where he has lifted all but one of his drivers' titles. Now, Vettel, meanwhile, has has hinted a return to Formula One's grid next year, having left in 2022. And he has recently been quoted saying that he's been speaking to Toto Wolff, the president of Mercedes. So we just wait and see if Vettel, as he's coming out of retirement, will actually drive for Mercedes.
Vettel out of retirement. Okay, Kagiso Rabada is not in retirement, but he didn't play for the national team, so he was semi-retired in January. That's what he said. What do you make of what he said?
I mean, I know that he loves tests. He's always said that the greatest cricketers in the country are born from playing test cricket. And therefore, from what I'm reading, is that he feels they should have given them a choice to say, do you want to play in the SA20 or do you want to play in this test
And they
match?
didn't. They all played for the SA20. I mean, there's big money, big loot. But here's the point. I think Cricket SA, I understand it, they need the money.
Yeah.
So they had
Definitely.
a B team. Is it a B team or C team that went to New Zealand?
Literally, see, because most of them, it was like their first cap.
Yeah, okay, like 10 players making your debut in one game. Goodness.
Well, with
All
that said, it's a wrap from my side for now. I'll have more in the next hour for SAFM Sport. I'm Tumin Kapele.
The city of Cairo will be divided into two when Zamalek SC confronts their Modern Future. Zamalek strongly believe they are the kings of the city, but Modern Future want to display something special to conquer the Cairo derby. This is the second leg of the CAF Confederation Cup quarter-final. Catch Zamalek SC versus Modern Future, Sunday 7 April at 9 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
SAFM Sunrise with Stephen Grootes.
I mean, this is such a big story to have a Speaker of the National Assembly being accused by the NPA of receiving cash. He's now had to resign. What does this tell us about our society and about our politics?
Our constitution directs that the Speaker must be somebody who is impartial. And one of the values that the Speaker must safeguard is the value of integrity. So a person who is going to be impartial and be a custodian of integrity cannot be secretly receiving funds. And it was not us as the citizen who appointed Nosiviwe. We did not appoint her. It was Ramaphosa and the ANC who did that. So we cannot incriminate ourselves in that. That is not the type of people we are.
Sandile Swana, really appreciate the time. Thank you, the governance expert here on SAFM.
SAFM Sunrise with Stephen Grootes, 6 to 9 a.m.
X at SAFM Radio and at Ashraf Garda.
What do you make of the state of our SOEs, isn't it? I mean, and that would include, the ASCOM, it would include SABC, it would include the post office. I can go all the way down the line. What do you make of the state of South Africa's SOEs? We're going to talk about that to Mondli Gungubela pretty shortly, okay? So just stay tuned for that, right? But let's get some calls. Michael the first call I've had from Klebecha since I started this show. Michael, it's good to chat to you. Hi.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. Nice to hear you back on the radio.
Much appreciated. Okay, what do you want to get off your chest?
Okay, the speaker, right? Remember, the speaker is supposed to be above reproach in terms of ethics and morality and accountability and so on, right? But what I find interesting, though, is that when there was supposed to be an inquiry by parliamentarians into Palapala, right? The speaker did not allow that to happen. Okay, so I'm saying how come that there was no outcry over that from of the speaker taking that position? If you get what I'm trying to say, 'cause we can't have. Morality cannot be selective. Okay. Everybody is outraged, she's corrupt and so on and so forth. But there was no outrage when she stopped an inquiry that 3 judges said must go on.
All right, fair point. So now that the position she's in now, what do you make of that? Sometimes, these things take a while. I'm not suggesting you're wrong. Now that she's had to step down and is being, obviously, is being charged, what do you make of that?
No, but obviously, remember, she did not just when these allegations came, she did not just say, look, in light of these allegations, I'm stepping down. She even went to court that you can't arrest me for it. So it's not as if she just said, oh, I'm stepping down. No, she just realized that, look, I need to just sit down. Perhaps a party also spoke to her. But the point I'm trying to make is, why was there? We should have been outraged when she, as the speaker, said you cannot have this inquiry into Phala.
Okay.
That's what I'm raising.
Well,
yes.
you've raised it. I think it's an important point, and I want to know whether others would agree with you or not. Thanks for that call, Michaels from Klebecha. Thanks for the well wishes too. Much appreciated. Thanks as well. Kathy saying, Ashraf, it's such a pleasure to have you back at SAFM. Happy days. Thank you. Thumbs up. Much appreciated. Send us pictures, by the way, wherever you are. Pictures around the country listening to SAFM, particularly with your dial locked onto SAFM. I want to see that. There's been many already, and I think they're really cool. Send them. Certainly want to check them out. And you know that you can listen nationwide, 104 to 107, but also via live streaming on Facebook and on the X platform, as well as just, SAFM on the website, and you'll find it live streaming. So you have all these options available to you. Right, we chatted, I touched on earlier, I said, what do you think about the state of SOEs? But let's focus specifically on SOEs with regard to, communications and technologies or digital technology. Because we have with us on the line the Minister of Communications and Digital Technologies, Mondli Gungubele. Minister, appreciate your time and thanks for joining us. Minister Gungubele, thanks for joining us. Hello. Okay, we seem to, with irony, because we are talking communications here, but we'll certainly connect with the Minister of Communications pretty shortly. Thanks for the messages. We're getting many of them, people just enjoying what we're doing on the show. The show, of course, is called The National Pulse. Let me remind you why we call it that. One is we want to reflect the pulse of the nation, what you're thinking and what you're feeling right now. But also at the same time, we want to also, not just what you feel, but also give back to you what we see is happening around the country. So, for example, when we speak about the issue of the former Speaker in Parliament, and we're talking about her arrest, that is a reflection of where we are, because that impacts the pulse of the nation. But by the way, there's an SMS I got earlier, which I want to maybe pick up again, and I can't see who it's from, suggesting, and I think it's an interesting point, like saying something like, Ashraf, you know what, we're going to talk about in this case, the former Speaker all day, but what's about jobs? So here's an interesting one for you. Listening to this program right now, what is more important for you? Is it more important for you to know that to have a conversation about the former Speaker being arrested or being out on bail or having resigned, or is it more important for you that we talk to you about finding jobs and building growth and giving you the tools that you need to be able to be entrepreneurial, basically to survive and to have growth in your own family? What for you is more important of the two? If you had a choice, I certainly want to know. WhatsApp, in text or voice notes, 0614 104 107. I understand now we do have Minister Mondli Gungubele on the line, Minister of Communications and Digital Technologies. Thank you for your time and thanks for joining us. Minister, you're live on the air.
Hello, who's speaking?
Yes, Ashraf Garda, you're live on the air. This is the National Pulse on SAFM Radio. Thanks for joining us.
Ashraf, how are you?
I'm very good. But perhaps I'll know better. I can respond if you give me a good report on the state of SOEs in terms of what is in your domain. So you go ahead and tell me. I know you had a report this morning, right?
Yep. With regard to our SOE, the trajectory is in the positive direction. FADC, with all its challenges of insolvency, it has been actually stabilized by the new board and the new CEO and the new executive. Postbank is also on course towards stabilization. A 15-year experienced CEO has already hired executives in positions where they were for no less than 9 years. As we speak now, FADC, Postbank, they have actually passed one of their major variation elements, which is a new card that passed the test of banks. No less than 3 banks actually found the bank compliant. So as we speak, we've already spoken about the post office, that post office could have been collapsed, closed through liquidation. As we speak now, the business rescue practitioners have put it on course towards the rescue. There are challenges going forward, but it can't be compared to a post office that could have been closed through liquidation. A number of other entities, ZETNA, Unqualified Audit, Centec and BPI, doing well in connecting the country. As we speak now, they have connected the country with no less than 749,000 houses in the country in 1 year. What it means access to a gig of no less than 5 rand for more than 80 rand per gig. It means rural communities and townships are actually having affordable access. They are able to participate online, to download fed books, to download books for assignment, children in poor families. In a number of areas, that includes Kokstad, Mount Ellis, Mutimule, no longer travel distances to actually look for textbook. They actually use their gadget at an affordable protocol.
Well, it's good you say so, if I can say that, Minister, because, we all know this, that I think the currency of communication and therefore learning today would be connectivity, right? So if we have South Africans in metropolitan areas as well as in rural communities who are disconnected because of poor connectivity, poor Wi-Fi, and no access to the advancement of technology, then that deficit will be widened and much to their disadvantage and much to the disadvantage of our country, isn't it?
Perfect, because experts would have told you that the 4IR technologies can either perpetuate the existing inequalities or equalize. By focusing on rural and the townships in connectivity, we are actually combating those gaps. And it is beginning to show a huge difference, what we call Ashraf.
How? Let's just touch on two things. I mean, the post office. I look at my local post office, and you just look at it, and it looks in a really bad state, right? There's been a case for it to be, closed off, dissolved, privatized in some way, or maybe just rejigged in a completely different way. Obviously, at this point in time, government has opted not to do that, but to actually revive it. Long term, you don't want it to just survive. You want it to thrive. I mean, are you convinced that's going to happen in a very challenging economy?
Can you repeat what you just said? I missed you.
I was saying the last part. I mean, the state of the post office in particular. There's been cases, and maybe solid cases, to say why it should not be saved and maybe replaced with something far more, either privatized or something more significant. The fact that it's been, resuscitated at this point in time or given a life, right? Are you convinced that, in fact, long term, it won't just survive, but it will thrive?
We've no doubt. Post office challenge is a function of us having poorly led it, poorly managed it. It's not a witchcraft. It's something that can be easily corrected. And we're very excited that we're able to save it from liquidation. Post office, there's a lot of alternatives. But what is key is the commitment to the service of the poor. Millions who, if this institution comes to closure, are going to be badly affected in terms of their communication. For instance, one of the ideas of the Post Office of Tomorrow was the digital hubs. Those hubs, it's where in the far-flung rural areas, people have got access to a center where they can upload information, download emails. SMMEs can upload their application, download the responses and so on, but doing it in the comfort of their home, no matter how far-flung. The point is, the private sector, as it is, because of the profit orientation, are not able to service that. So we have got an obligation to make sure that post office survives, so that the poor are lifted where they are to the other level wherever.
Okay, and we are speaking, against the backdrop of SMMEs or SOEs in general. SOEs, let me get that clear. In general, in South Africa. Underperforming, isn't it? So if someone is skeptical, whether it's about the post office or the SABC, and I'm not even getting into Eskom because that's not your domain, I understand. But if someone throws up those examples to say so many of our SOEs are underperforming, why then are you so confident that you're going to get it right?
Listen, not long ago, I was in New York, where we were actually exposed on the modern ways of helping SMEs to participate online. 5 key pillars are articulated there, Ashraf. 1, security of connectivity. 2, affordability of internet, affordability of data. 3, training SMEs and their employees, and the other one is security. 5, training them on the benefit of participating online. Those are not dream issues. Already, as I'm speaking to you, where BBI and Fentech are connecting, the last line or the last mile is being done by ISPs that actually go forward to take where the areas they have connected as their clients. Those are SMMAs, and they are able to do it because they are participating online.
Okay, just a quick one in 30 seconds. You already mentioned, I mean, the SABC, there's been a turnaround. I mean, how profound is that turnaround? Because, you don't want to have a situation where there's been bailout after bailout after bailout, year after year.
The turnaround is critical in the sense that, 1, it looks at all the opportunities that are there with regard to potential generation of revenue. It does not only rely on those opportunities, it has put together a team that is capable of doing so.
Okay, that's where we're going to leave it, and we certainly will follow that story. Mondli Gungubela, the Minister of Communications and Digital Technologies, effectively pronouncing on the state of the SOEs that falls within his domain today, including the Post Office and of course the SABC. Right, let's move on then to a significant development today with regard to the countdown to the elections of the 29th of May. With me is Janet Love, the Electoral Commission's Vice Chairperson, regarding a significant signing ceremony. Well, just how significant is that? Let's find out. Janet, appreciate your time and good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you, Ashraf, and to your listeners.
Thank you. So I've used the word significant twice. How significant was today's signing ceremony?
I think it's really a very, very important occasion. It enables each party that is contesting on the national proportional ballot, which is what we used to call the national to national ballot. It enables each of those political parties to make a pledge that is indicating what their key message is to the nation and their undertaking in relation to how they will conduct themselves and how they will address their supporters in ensuring that the election promotes freedom and fairness and democracy. So in that sense, I think it's a very, very important occasion. And in this instance, we were also joined by some of the independent candidates who will have an opportunity also to sign pledges in the provincial ceremonies as well. Who were also able to make, I think, a very strong impression and to be a very good presence because they are new, as we know, in our electoral system.
So in that pledge, and I understand, do I get it that different parties would sign one pledge or they have their own pledge devised in their own words?
So there is a pledge, and it's what every party that came today, and every independent candidate came, and they committed themselves to the pledge. It's a fairly long pledge in the sense of your time as radio, but it essentially commits candidates and parties to ensuring free activity and to ensuring that voters hear different points of view, and it commits to upholding the code of conduct and to working with other role players and in particular the Electoral Commission to ensure that elections are a success.
Okay, here's the question. Here's the question, right? Is the signing of the pledge by these parties and the independents, is that conditional, or let me rephrase it, is it conditional that to contest the election you need to sign the pledge?
I think that the issue of signing the pledge is not something that is conditional, but I think what is conditional is the fact that you have to adhere to the code of conduct. That is something that in the acceptance of nominations and all the rest of it, there is the commitment to doing that. The pledge is really putting what is in the code of conduct in a more overarching manner to explain how the conduct of any party and its supporters can really be an essential factor in securing the freedom and the fairness of our elections.
And this election coming up is heavily contested, as many other elections are naturally, but I'm not going to ask you to comment on this, accepting that, there is a likelihood that the ruling party may not get its 50%, so that has all sorts of implications. Now, it is in that backdrop there's been greater discussions around the credibility of the IEC. Did that come up again today, and how do you respond to those that charge that, these guys are just going to side with one party to keep them in power?
Look, I think that the issue of the credibility of the IEC came up on a number of occasions, but not in the way that you have mentioned, in the sense of questioning it. Or rather, I think there was a huge amount of affirmation from candidates from new parties that are not yet represented in any legislature, as well as parties that have been represented. And I think from the point of view of the Commission, we've made it very clear. We try and put in place systems that enable all participants, all stakeholders, to help us to make the election successful. We've never claimed to be an organization that makes no mistakes. We try and make no mistakes, but we know that there can be mistakes, and we know also that everybody's got to have a say. And so that's, I think, the kind of discourse that went on today. And as I say, there were parties that were particularly praising, of the Commission because of the way in which it has helped, especially unrepresented parties, in their efforts to comply with the new legislation. And from our point of view, I think that we believe that there was a huge commitment to cooperate with us.
Okay, that's where we're going to leave it, Janet. I'm sure we're going to have many more chats between now and May 29, probably even more so even after May 29. So thank you for your time, Janet Love, the Electoral Commission's, in the IEC, that is, Vice Chairperson, reflecting on the signing ceremony of the Electoral Code of Conduct by many of the parties as well as independent candidates. And here's a question. Anybody refused to sign it? I couldn't get a chance to ask that, but perhaps something we need to know about it. Anybody refused to sign at all? Let's get the news now. It's 4 o'clock. Here's Ann Musa.
Thanks, Ashraf. In our top stories, findings into Latoya Tamilton's death revealed, and still a long wait for clean water in Hammanskraal. Good afternoon. A report into the death of pupil Latoya Tamilton states the Laerskool Queenswood management team and educators compromised on the safety of the learners. The grade 7 learner from the Pretoria school tragically lost her life in January this year during a school leadership camp. The Gauteng Education Department disclosed the independent report on the drowning of Tamilton. Director at Nchupetsang attorneys Mishek Nchupetsang, commissioned to investigate the circumstances surrounding her death, says the school neglected to specify what the swimming activity would entail in letters that were sent out to parents.
On the letters, one of the letters, it indicated that there was swimming, and then that was it. So therefore, there was no indication as to whether there will be lifeguard on site in relation to the swimming, whether learners should bring the life jackets, or whether the learners can swim or not. Instead, it just said learners need to bring swimming costumes. So therefore, our recommendation there is that the relevant SMT and educators be charged as well in terms of those regulations, because they really compromised on the safety of the learners.
Former National Assembly Speaker Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula has been granted 50,000 rand bail. Magistrate Anna Oosthuizen says it's in the interest of justice that the former Speaker be released on bail. Mapisa-Nqakula appeared before the Pretoria Magistrates Court, where she faces 12 counts of corruption in relation to the Prevention and Combating of Corrupt Activities Act and 1 count of money laundering. Mapisa-Nqakula is accused of soliciting bribes worth 4 million rand from a defence contractor during her tenure as Defence Minister. Oosthuizen says the Criminal Procedure Act regulates what factors the court ought to take into consideration when considering bail. Oosthuizen explains.
The court must weigh up the interest of justice against the right of the applicant in this matter and her personal right to freedom and any prejudice she might suffer if bail is not granted and she is detained. What is important for the court to consider is also the address of the state in this matter, that the applicant handed herself over to the police, and weighing all these factors, the court is then satisfied that the applicant did acquit herself of the onus, that it is in the interest of justice that she be released on bail.
Criminologist Professor Kulufelo Rakubu says South Africa is nowhere near ending violent crime and utilization of guns due to the easy access of firearms. 28 people are reported to have died in police shootouts in KwaZulu-Natal since the start of the year. Yesterday, KwaZulu-Natal police shot 9 suspects who were wanted in connection with a series of violent crimes. Rakubu says although she applauds the Provincial Police Commissioner on the approach to deal with crime, she wishes they could urgently establish a specialized firearms unit or deploy a gun violence prevention strategy. She says for that to happen, the SAPS and justice system needs to be strengthened.
We need that the politics of crime be efficiently attended to. When now resources come into place, don't put a paper on the table and not beef it up with the necessary resources, finances. Municipalities need to budget efficiently and incorporate issues of safety in their IDPs, because now as they talk manifestos, they are promising so much in safety, yet after elections, they don't even remember what they promised when it comes to safety.
Hammanskraal residents will have to wait a bit longer until they have clean running water, this despite promises by the Water and Sanitation Department that it would provide interim relief at least by March this year. This followed the deaths of at least 31 residents due to a cholera outbreak in the area in May last year. Part of the temporary relief was the installation of a portable water treatment at the nearby Klipdrift Water Treatment Works. The Deputy Director General of the Water and Sanitation Department, Risimati Maties, says the delays were due to tendering issues, but work has commenced and says the first 10 megalitres of water should start running from August.
We are of the view and commitment that later in the year, the first 10 megalitres of that water package plant will be functional. So it will be able to supply clean water to areas of Hammanskraal and bypass the current Themba water treatment works and then supply water to the communities. This is actually the overall progress today. And of course, the package plant will continue to be constructed until early next year. It's supposed to be a 40 to 50 megalitres water treatment, the package plant to supply Hammanskraal.
Further field and finally, authorities in Ukraine's second largest city, Kharkiv, say 4 people were killed and a dozen injured in repeated Russian drone attacks. The drone struck residential buildings and an energy facility in the surrounding region yesterday. The BBC's correspondent Sarah Rainsford reports.
Officials in Kharkiv say multiple drones hit the city and region in several waves, striking civilian infrastructure and people's houses. Rescue workers were at the scene of one attack, trying to reach those trapped under the ruins when they were killed in another drone strike on the same spot. Ukraine has called it a cynical and targeted attack, but it's not the first time it's happened here.
Recapping the top story, a report into the death of pupil Latoya Tamilton states the Large School Queenswood management team and educators compromised on the safety of the learners. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
Coming up in your sports this hour, Mamelodi Sundowns without Bongani Zungu and Musa Libusa for Yanga clash. Chauke grateful for Proteas technical team stint, and Saudi Arabia to host WTA finals for the next 3 years. More details at 4:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Well, some good news first up. If you're driving down from Pretoria to the airport, just wondering whether you're going to have to go through what you went through yesterday. No, you won't. There's just one set of roadworks causing delays. That's the zone just before Olifantsfontein. So the R21 approaching Clayville is slow. After that, it clears nicely down through that second construction area at Benoni off-ramp, which caused all the major delays yesterday. Broken down vehicle M1 south of Buccleuch, so that's slow from Allendale. Stationary vehicle N1 north after Willie Mandela. So a delay there, and a crash on the R24 heading from Edenvale down into Galilee issues just by the N12 merge. Backlogging traffic. Durban, there's a breakdown at Cliffdale, so if you're heading from Pietermaritzburg towards Durban, that's reasonably slow. Also a breakdown on the N2 South before you get to Spaghetti Junction, so pushback as far as Inanda Road today. And just outside Cape Town, if you're on the N2 around Botrafia, there's some more roadworks that have gone into that. It's quite heavily backed up, the N2 both driving to Cape Town and driving out outbound through Botrafia. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide, leading the conversation.
And we will buy 500 cars, and we will buy 500 more. Just to be the one who buys your car, will come to you and offer more. We buy cars, we buy cars. Da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-da-da. We buy cars, we buy cars. Da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-da. We buy cars, the easiest way to sell your car by far.
Masanda wanna trust their creativity to ensure Yanga gets nothing from Mzansi's capital city. But the gentlemen from the east want to leave Kabuyelo in tears. This is the second leg quarterfinal battle of the CAF Champions League. Experience Africa's beautiful game, Mamelodi Sundowns versus Young Africans, on Friday 5 April at 8 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
No. I've heard on the radio stations, they're not filling vacancies, there is no money.
No, but that's my question to you. If they don't have the money, will the doctor work for Mahala?
Give me a chance. I'm going to give you a reason.
No. I'm asking you. I need to challenge your position.
No. Nobody works for free.
Right now, the National Pulse is boiling over.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda. Ashraf Garda on SAFM.
And I take it you have a feel for the National Pulse. What you're feeling for yourself, what you're feeling for your family, what you're feeling about South Africa. And I'm sure you have many views on all of those things. You know you can engage with me all throughout the show. Probably the best way is WhatsApp text or voice notes 0614 104 107. And then you can call in 086 000 2032. You can watch, you can listen nationwide on radio, but also watch us on streaming. Go to the SAFM website. You can pick it up streaming live on audio as well as visually. If you go to the Twitter or Twitter X platform, you'll certainly find us, and good to connect with you, sort of giving you a thumbs up if you're watching us. Absolutely. By the way, hashtag we use is the National Pulse, which is exactly what the show is all about, getting a sense of the National Pulse. Talking about that, it's certainly election season, we know that. We'll chat to two people that I think is going to be really interesting. Prof. Stephen Friedman will talk about the fact that the absence of a formidable left-wing political party weakens South Africa's democracy. Do you agree with that? We'll talk to him about that. I may well ask the same question to General Bantu Holomisa, because he's my guest featured in what we call the Election Monitor for just about an hour, in fact, from 5 o'clock onwards. So a good chance for you to text questions even now, which will, and of course, call in when I talk to him about the UDM and what their election hopes and aspirations are. And of course, that all-important manifesto. Well, how important is that manifesto? I tell you what, someone said earlier on, what about jobs? And I can understand these big issues, because when it comes to other issues in the country, sometimes we forget that the issues of joblessness and poverty and hunger and the lack of food is like paramount to many, many people. So with that in mind, the conversation we can have now in Polokwane or about Polokwane is really important. With me is Michael Makungo, who's an SABC journalist in that region. Michael, appreciate your time. Good afternoon.
And to all the listeners.
Thank you. Now, we're talking to you because I understand there's been a shutdown in Polokwane. So what's the story? Why the shutdown? What's happened?
Definitely, it emanated from the message that has been circulating on the social media since last week, where there were some people, faceless people, that we could not even mention their name, because we did not even know their names, on voice notes and on the messages saying they are calling for all the residents to take part in the total shutdown in Polokwane, because they are not happy about the service delivery, mainly basically on the issue of water. We know especially the area like the Shehu Township outside Polokwane, they've been experiencing a water challenge for several months. Sometimes they can even go for maybe 2 weeks without even a single drop of water. Now they shut down. They shut down this morning. I can say there's still a shutdown because most of the shops, starting in town in Polokwane, in the city of Polokwane, most of the shops have not been opening today. They have been closed. Even now, they remain closed to most of the shops, and most of the hawkers they've removed their merchandise from the street because they felt unsafe because there was a minimal there's a minimal movement of people in the city of Polokwane.
Mm-hmm.
But this afternoon, we have seen the situation getting better. A number of people are starting to be seen in the town. There's an increase of people so far. But going back to the township of the Shehu, where the situation of the problem started or emanated, is where earlier in the morning we have seen residents blockaded the main roads with rocks, and we have seen police firing rubber bullets to disperse some of them who were gathered outside the Shehu police station, where the mayor was meeting with some of the community leaders to resolve the matter. We know that there was also an IDP budget consultation at Ngwakura Mahluli Hall in Seshego, where those protesters, they even attempt or try to disrupt it, but we understand that the mayor and his team managed to successfully held that IDP budget consultation. But so far, the situation is much better. The roads, most of the roads in Seshego have been cleared, but going to Mankweni side, the tax operation was suspended that side because tax association were also part. They are also part of this shutdown.
So some clarity. I mean, you're saying that the position is better now. It's better in terms of a sense of normality, but the issue of, let's take water in particular. I mean, that remains, right? There is no water in many parts of that region. Is that correct?
Definitely, there's some parts where there's no water as we're speaking.
Okay. Have the authorities, and we'll chat to the executive mayor shortly, by the way, have the authorities indicated when that will get sorted out?
Definitely, we spoke with the mayor who indicated that by the end of this year, maybe in December, the issue of water will be the history in Polokwane because there's a state-of-art plant that they're busy constructing, and the construction started last year, and I think by the end of December it will be completed. And I think that plant is going to help them to produce a high capacity of water.
Okay. Just the last thing, you made the point that there was a call, whether it's a letter form from an unknown organization. So let's get clarity on that. Is it unknown, no title, no context? If I asked you who were the organizers of this stay away, you can't tell me. Is that correct?
Yes, those are the people that we cannot mention, that we don't know, because it's just a voice note circulating on social media. We're just seeing some of the messages on social media, but you don't see the name. Who is this organization leading this shutdown? Who are these people who are leading this shutdown? But definitely, when we talked to them, when we spoke with the mayor earlier, he indicated that he believes that there's also a political motive behind this shutdown. I'm
going to ask the mayor about that shortly. Thanks for that. Thanks for your conversation, Michael Makungo, SABC journalist in Limpopo. No water in Polokwane, shut down in the town. Huge concerns there. Some people shutting down in protest, supporting others concerned about safety. Many issues. Bottom line, an impoverished area and a community that in a country that really needs the economy ticking is not ticking over because there's no economic turnover right now. Having said that, protests work, don't they? We'll find out more about that with John Impe, who's the executive mayor at the Polokwane municipality. Mayor Impe, appreciate your time. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. Good afternoon to the listeners of SAFM.
Thank you. Now, there's been a shutdown today. What's your response in terms of the why and how do you deal with it?
Well, there was what is termed shutdown, but it has been business as usual. In most of our malls were opened. Of course, those who are protesting, they are raising genuine issues. in terms of the water challenges that we have and other related service delivery challenges. But however, what we have picked up, because I will take it that before you do a shutdown, you should have met with us. Before you do a shutdown, you would have maybe had a march before. So the organizers opted to go the route of shutting down the economy of Polokwane.
But I mean, just to step in there, isn't that the issue? That means you can't prescribe to disgruntled people how they feel and what they must do next. I mean, if the water was running, there would be no shutdown, isn't it? So they could come back to you to say, before you shut down the water, come and have a negotiation with us.
Well, of course, you can't. If there are those challenges to that particular extent. Look, we have got a deficit of water supply in Polokwane for some time now, and that is why over the past 2 years we have been building a plant that will add the 10 megaliters. Our deficit in the urban complex is around 40 megaliters per day.
What's the cause of that deficit?
Look, it's firstly, of course, the population growth is appreciated, but I think our utilities, the Pella Northern Water, has not also been improving in terms of their ability to supply that quantity of water required by growing cities.
So another example of service delivery being compromised, isn't it? And I can understand.
Well, I will say to the extent of maintaining even the existing infrastructure, I believe that we should have done better, because the other sources of water should have been explored, because it is very clear that Polokwane has been on a growth trajectory for some time. So what we are doing as the municipality at the moment is that we have looked at the short term. We've got a plant that will bring us the 10 megaliters, which we're already on a practical completion. We're busy commissioning. We are testing the plant. Up until the end of this month, we will get the 10 megaliters into the system directly in Seshego. The current plant in Seshego is only giving us 1.5 megaliters, so it's a good yielding from that point of view. We also have got another plant, which is the Sand River, that we're busy building, which we believe should be completed around August to give us another 18 megaliters. This is what we're doing as a city. The national government is also intervening to increase the sources, both at Olifantspoort as well as the Ebenezer one, and also in terms of the long term, there is also a project to actually get a pipeline from Duo.
But at this point in time, Mayor Impe, at this point in time, confirm to me how widespread is the water shortage in your region? I mean, just to give us an understanding of what the citizens of that community are feeling.
Well, if you say, you've got various factors to the water challenges. The first one of which is the where you've got a high number of cable thefts that affect some of your pump stations. You've got also the challenges with regard to the current rainfall in Limpopo. So we do have that particular challenge. Like I said, that it's also coupled with the performance of our utility, because if we were saying as a municipality we owe the Pella Northern Water something, that is why they are not giving us enough water. It was something.
Okay, I understand that, Mr. Mayor, but I just want to confirm. I understand the why, right? Because you explained that, right? But what I'm just trying to understand is, give us a sense of the how widespread is the water shortage today, yesterday, tomorrow, so that I can understand how citizens are suffering in that region.
Well, I mean, it is not like we do not have water at all in Polokwane. Otherwise, I would not be standing here. I don't think so. What is happening is that we are operating our water in a way of diverting water to various areas at a particular time. And so what we have done as well is we have already started, dealing with the issue of augmenting water through some boreholes alongside the Sand River that are already starting to make the impact. So we believe that by the end of this month, there will be a whole lot of improvement when Seshego water purification plant come into the system. However, like I said, that there are other projects that are medium-term and long-term to deal with the problem. But at the moment, people are continuing to go on. I mean, we have unlocked development. There are new shopping centers that have been opened. We're building, there is a construction of the new hospitals across the city. So the issue is just that we do have some challenges in terms of sustaining that, because once you've got a 10 or more than 10 megaliters of a deficit daily, then it means that you will have to do like a water shedding kind of a program. So that is where the problem is.
Yeah.
And also the load shedding does not really do justice, because you know that most of the plants are operated by electricity from Eskom.
So this show is called the National Pulse. So naturally, I should ask you, what's your blood pressure like? I mean, it is to be able to manage a municipality with the amount of problems that you face on a daily basis. I think that's incredibly difficult.
Well, I don't think so. I think that we are on course. As long as we do have the solutions, we do have the plans, and we're implementing those plans. Of course, now some of the challenges will be triggered by opportunistic political parties as they launch their campaign towards 29th of May polls. But we are on course as a municipality to address our own problems and our own challenges in the city. Polokwane is a growing city with a whole lot of other developments that are actually taking place.
So the pulse is beating at a normal rate. I mean, you're chilled with that. I do understand you've also alluded to the problems of today in this day way as being political. What does that mean?
What it means is that with the manner that we are addressing our own problems, there are those who feel that when the solutions come, they should not accredit the current ruling African National Congress in the city of Polokwane. So I think they are preempting that if they strike, probably they will also claim that part of the issues that now the plant is bringing more water to Seshego, it will be because they had a strike or they had a shutdown. So which we do not believe in that. We are working as a municipality, not because there are elections, and we are solving our problems on a daily basis. I mean, if you come to Polokwane, you'll be able to witness a whole lot of developments that are taking place. They are not taking place now because they are elections.
But is there party political meddling in what has happened today with a view to a greater purpose in terms of gaining some votes, whether it's ruling party, whether it's opposition, to gain some votes in the election?
Of course, opposition parties, you've got new organizations that do not have the constituencies, and anybody who is disgruntled from other parties, they are able to see whether they cannot make an impact, in the last few weeks. While there are genuine issues that we are addressing, we believe that there are those that, of course, you will see them after this. Some of them issued posters midnight to say, now we are the ones behind the march. Whereas at the beginning of the march, they were not actually showing face. It was mainly community organizations. So that get to tell you that also the mood of electioneering.
So which party has now revealed their face and said, we behind the march?
I do not want to promote any political party except the one that I belong to.
But I mean, you're not promoting the party, but Mr. Mayor, you're not promoting the party. You're simply relating a fact that this party is doing so. And whether that would come across as positive or negative is for the voter to decide.
Look, there are various political parties. I do not want to attach a specific political parties. It is not of interest. What I know and I understand is that it is that period where political parties are hunting for votes. And while there are issues, they will obviously use those genuine issues in order for themselves to position themselves. We are not working according to the seasons. We know that we've got plans, we've got also plans that need to come into the system. We are working towards completing the other one that I've mentioned in Sand River to resolve the issue of water. We're also doing other things. I mean, we're implementing over 40 roads programs where we are tarring roads, even in rural
as you should, right? As you should. Let's leave it at that. Executive Mayor at the Polokwane Municipality, John Imper, thank you for your time. I'll tell you what, here's the one broad issue. If you want to knock the opposition parties out for 6, right, simply enhance your service delivery. That's it, right? Let's get some calls. Ronald wants to talk about IEC pledges. Ronald, hi.
Hi, Ashraf. First of all, Ashraf, afternoon to your listeners and welcome back to SAFM.
Much appreciated. Thank you. Right, what do you want to get off your chest, Ronald?
Ashraf, I'm the leader of the Northern Cape Communities Movement, one of the organizations on the national, regional, and provincial ballot paper, provincially only for the Northern Cape. And we didn't make it today to the signing of the Code of Conduct. But I just wanted to share that we do fully adhere. We are committed to make sure that we have a free and fair elections. And we are behind the people of the Northern Cape, in the Northern Cape and outside the Northern Cape, to make sure that the Northern Cape continues to put forward a constituency model that really shows the people that the vote, the power can stay with the people.
Here's a quick question to you. Is that pledge very important to you, that you signed the pledge? You didn't sign the pledge, but is that pledge important? How do you see it?
Ashraf, it is. Though we find that, political parties don't go further to make sure that the members understand what they are pledging to. So it's really just symbolic in terms of those that are there, to be in front of the cameras. But for us, it's important that the members understand, because.
But why do you say it's symbolic? I mean, why is it just? Why do you say it's just to be in front of the cameras?
Because, like I'm saying, Ashraf, if you go to the ground now, if you go into the wards, the people that represent the political party don't understand what is the reason of that pledge. And it is them that has to be, living it out on the ground. It is them that has to be peaceful. It is them that has to campaign in a certain way. We are seeing our posters being removed in municipalities. It is not the people that is in front of the cameras. It's their supporters on the ground that goes and remove posters. So to that extent, it's symbolic. It is something that should happen, from the minute that the date is declared, so that political parties is being monitored. Because it's no point that we stand in front of cameras and pledging as leaders, but on the ground, our members continue to act against the Code of Conduct.
Okay, let's see if that is really the case. Ronald, thanks for that call. Very enlightening, and certainly got me thinking, as I'm sure it's going to get you as an audience, as part of the nationwide audience at SFM, thinking about it as well. Any thoughts on that? WhatsApp, text or voice notes, 0614 104 107. Right, what's your feel of the national pulse? You tell me. Let's get to the news headlines now. It's 3:30. Here's En Musa.
Good afternoon. Thanks, Ashraf. In the headlines, President Cyril Ramaphosa says he has formed an eThekwini working group to help restore the port of Durban to its former glory. Ramaphosa was speaking at the official opening of Newland PX Terminal, Africa's largest multimodal rail. A report into the death of pupil Latoya Tamilton states the Laer Skool Queenswood management team and educators compromised on the safety of the learners. The grade 7 learner from the Pretoria school tragically lost her life in January this year during a school leadership camp. And aid groups working in Gaza have demanded that the Israeli army improve and adhere to security procedures aimed at keeping their workers safe. Details on these and other stories at 5.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
If you're on your way out of Pretoria to the airport, the news is good today. Yesterday was a nightmare, just the one set of roadworks to worry about today. It's the longest term, one's at Clayville, so the R21 queuing to Olifantsfontein. After that, you got a nice open run through, down through the second set of roadworks at the Benoni off-ramp. Greyston Drive coming out of Sandton, that's quite heavy today towards the Mike 1 Highway, and a crash on the R24 just as you come onto the N12 merge, slowing traffic back through the Edenvale exit. Durban, a breakdown at Cliffdale on the N3. It's a stationary truck, so just watch out out for some slowing traffic on that run through towards Durban today. And Cape Town, an earlier crash on the N2 out of town just before the M5 highway. That's the reason for the backlogs getting out through Hospital Bend, Nelson Mandela Boulevard. Philip Kosana are heavy. The M3 inbound from UCT, backlogging into Hospital Bend to join that busy N2 outbound. And there's also been a crash on the R300 northbound. It's pretty much halfway between Stellenbosch Arterial Road and the Van Riebeeck exit of Kales River. So it's quite a queue coming north from Delft as you head slowly up towards the Kales River area. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Khapele.
Right, the big sports stories to me.
Well, we start things off with netball this hour, where former Spar Proteas assistant coach Dumisani Chauke says that she's very thankful to have contributed to growing netball in South Africa when she was part of the national team. Now, Chauke was first appointed as the baby Spar Proteas assistant coach back in 2016 before joining the senior team alongside Dorette Badenhorst in 2019, and also served alongside Noma Plama at the 2023 Netball World Cup in Cape Town. Chauke says that she will forever cherish the opportunity that Netball South Africa gave her.
My experience as assistant coach of the Spar Proteas has been great. Afforded, the opportunity to contribute to the sport of netball in South Africa. Afforded the opportunity to learn from different coaches, as well as impact, the players that came through the corridors and came through the system of the Spar Proteas. Got the opportunity to travel to different parts of the world, meet different people as well, and learn new things about myself that I didn't know, opportunities to discover new strengths, opportunities to discover new talent, and also, building, experiences that helped in building character, enhancing resilience, as well as courage and boldness in an individual. So it was a very good experience for me. Enjoyed every minute of it.
Moving on to rugby, Stephen Kitchoff says that he's focused on having a successful end to his first season with Ulster, then talks around an early return to the Stormers. Kitchoff has been linked with a return to the Stormers next season, despite only arriving in Belfast after the 2023 World Cup in November on a 3-year contract. Now, Ulster's struggling season has seen head coach Dan McFarland leaving midway through the campaign, while the club is also facing financial difficulties, which could open the door for Kitchoff's exit. Kitchoff faced his former side in the URC in Cape Town last weekend, his 12th game for Ulster, which the club has only won 4. Then moving on to football action, South African referee Akonama Kalima says that Banyana's performance in recent times has raised the standard of women's game in South Africa and has inspired the next generation of female footballers. The reigning Women's Africa Cup of Nations champions and the 2023 FIFA Women's World Cup quarterfinalists are currently preparing themselves to take on Nigeria. That game at Loftus Stadium, and Makalima believes that there's a high chance that Banyana will maintain the same trajectory as they fight for their spot at the 2024 Paris Games.
The ladies have really made a positive impact in the South African football. I mean, particularly also with the standard of women football raising each and every year. I mean, all the ladies now, I'm sure everybody who is playing football, they want to see themselves one day playing for the national team. And the national team is really doing us proud, or making us proud, if I may put it that way. And you can see that the ladies are driven, the ladies are fighting. So it has really raised the standard of our football. And also I see that people are really appreciating our girls. So, yeah.
Meanwhile, Mamelodi Sundowns have been dealt with a huge blow with Bongani Zungu and Musa Libusa out of their CAF Champions League quarterfinal second leg against Young Africans this weekend due to injuries. Zungu sustained an injury 13 minutes into the first leg, while Libusa was replaced in the 70th minute. And according to coach Rulani Mugwena, he says that the duo could be out of action for 4 weeks while nursing injuries. Elsewhere, Manchester City manager Pep Guardiola has told his side to prepare for another Premier League title race race that goes all the way to the last day of the season. Reigning champions City have been playing catch-up this term in a three-way clash with Arsenal and Liverpool, and asked if his team are hitting their best form of the season. Guardiola snapped back at the reporters.
But we were out of the title race 4 days ago, and the team was not playing good. The team was not playing like previous seasons, on the last 6 seasons. So now, 2 days after, we are in the best form of the league. Come on, guys.
And finally, Saudi Arabia will host the next 3 editions of the Women's Tennis Association Finals, the season-ending showpiece event of the Women's Tennis Tour. The Women's Professional Tennis Tour on Thursday, or today rather, announced a deal that will see prize money for this November's tournament raised at $15.25 million, a 70% increase from 2023. Now, the nation's capital, Riyadh, will host the event for the top 8 singles players and top 8 doubles teams from the 2nd to the 9th of November, along with the 2025 and 2026 tournaments. And this deal is the latest in a recent wave of investment by Saudi Arabia in tennis and various sports.
So where is it going to stop? I'm not saying it's wrong, but where is it going to stop with Saudi Arabia?
I don't see it stopping. I mean, hey, look
what have they got? I mean, I think they own the World Golf Tour, whatever it's called now, right?
Yeah, Live.
They own
Live
that.
Golf.
There's the football. There's the World Cup coming up there soon.
Yeah.
Ronaldo is like the ambassador for it. Now the tennis, the paddle championship, what I spoke about the other day, that's also now owned, but the paddle masters owned by Saudi Arabia.
I even heard about basketball. They wanting basketball. So they're literally going in hard when it comes to sports.
I'll tell you what, if you're a Man United, Man City, Arsenal fan, and you want to, rather, Man United, Liverpool, Arsenal fan, you want to win the league, ensure that Pep Guardiola gets...
Did you just say Man United?
Yes, I'm dreaming, but just hope that, not this year, I'm talking down the future, let them get transferred to Saudi Arabia, because, I mean, it's incredible what's happening in that part of the world.
Absolutely. Okay. That's it from my side for now. I'll have more in the next hour. For SAFM Sport, I'm Duming Khapele.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
Right, there's many people wanting to talk about, to comment. In fact, let's see, there's a couple of WhatsApps before we cross to... In fact, let's do this. Let's get to the markets first with Makwe Masilela, Chief Investment Officer at the Makwe Fund Managers. Makwe, appreciate your time as always. Good afternoon.
Afternoon to you, Ashraf, and good afternoon to the listeners.
Thank you. Right, let's talk local, global.
Yeah, the de facto leader in setting interest rates, which is the US, had been expected to start cutting interest rates as early as June, but the robust economic data boosted yields this week to multi-month highs, as many in the market questioned that timetable. And yesterday, the Fed chief said they largely agree that lower rates will be appropriate at some point this year, but only after the guys have greater confidence that inflation is going down, and that is towards their 2% target. So rate cuts, Ashraf, remained on the menu, even if their timing was unclear, and expectations of how fast and far rates will fall have been reduced by almost half. And very quietly, there seems to be some hope about the global growth, given a recovery in recent factory surveys, that is the PMI numbers, and that is particularly in China. We've seen steady improvement in manufacturing surveys throughout Q1, pointing to momentum improving broadly in the coming months, and the global manufacturing output PMI moved further into expansionary territory in March, and that is a reflection of positive results across major economies. And the rand continues to maintain its ground as the US dollar fell, handing back some of its recent gains, and that's because of uncertainty over the path of US interest rates, and that is ahead of the release of the mother of all reports tomorrow, that is the job numbers. And on company front, we've seen Harmony Gold signing a 5-year wage deal with trade unions, bringing stability in that company. And because of adverse weather conditions and demand expectations, prices for cocoa and coffee could continue going up, and oil prices are steady, helped by the concerns about lower supply, and particularly that we've seen major producers keeping output cuts in place and geopolitical tensions adding further risk. As we're talking now, the Brent crude is flat at $89 a barrel, and big demand coming from Asia, particularly from China, and solid demand from central banks, plus geopolitical risk and expectations around central banks cutting rates, all that kept yellow metal at elevated levels, even though today the gold, as we're talking, took a breather and now is down 0.3% at $2,293, and platinum is down 1% at $941. So these retreating yields are lifting stocks. Hence, we see the DOX is up 0.2%, FTSE up 0.4%, the CAC is flat, the Dow is up 0.4%, S&P is up 0.7%, and our local bourse is up 1.6%, with our resources doing most of the heavy lifting, up 2.8%, financials up 1.8%, and our industrials are up 1%, and the rand is 18.63 to the US dollar, 23.64 to the pound, and 20.28 to the euro.
Well, that's it for now. We'll certainly chat sometime soon. Thank you for that.
X at SAFM Radio and at Ashraf Garda.
All right, so we've asked you for pictures, and if you wish to send some pictures, send it to wherever you are around the country with the picture. Ideally, of you sort of locked in on that dial of SAFM. It'll be just great if you do. Like, it'll be a thumbs up from me, right? But also, at all times, you can call, you can text via WhatsApp, as well as you can WhatsApp voice note. You can also, you can also tweet us to the X platform, and if you're tweeting, tag SAFM Radio, tag me, Ashraf Garda. Do use the hashtag The National Pulse. And also you can post comments on Facebook as well. So many options that you certainly have. I'll tell you what, there's a few comments that we've got regarding General Bantu Holomisa. We're going to talk to him. You know that as part of the feature that we call the Election Monitor. He comes up as my guest after 5. Don't miss that. We'll also chat to Professor Stephen Friedman pretty shortly about his thoughts on the absence of a solid leftist party in South Africa and the implications thereof. I think you don't want to miss that. Having said that, let's get some voice notes. People have commented about the goings on in Polokwane and the conversation I had with the mayor of that region, Yades.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. The Polokwane municipality was ignorant for quite some time. As we speak currently, I'm a member of ANC. I'm not saying this because I'm not a member of ANC. There are employees who are affected by their non-payment towards or to the service providers. People, salaries are not paid on time, contributions to UIF and every other thing that is a contribution that should be paid over to other institutions are not done by companies or people who are giving service or providing service to the municipality because the municipality is not paying.
Okay, that's one about the municipalities not paying, and that point's been very emphatic. Here's some more.
Good afternoon, the National Pulse community. It's Anonymous here from Mpumalanga. I just want to make a comment in regards to what John Mpe was speaking about. To show that that man is a liar, he couldn't even answer to a simple question that you asked, that who are the political parties who are rallying behind the strike? He dismally couldn't answer that. So what is happening in Polokwane, it's a mess. They mustn't say there are developments which are happening because currently at Seshego, there is a construction that has been on for the past 2 years. They've closed down the circle. They've implemented a lane for the bus Lieto. They've done this and this. We cannot even travel. During this time, peak hours, it's a mess. We cannot travel from town to Seshego because the circle is closed. We do not know what is happening there. We are being detoured into a gravel road which is not even being maintained. It's a mess. Can somebody please assist us?
Okay, I must say, I mean, the part about the mess, I'm not there, but I would think that you're spot on, right? On the part about that he is lying because he couldn't mention the parties, I don't think he's lying. I think he chose not to mention the parties. He chose that. He said he doesn't want to promote them. And of course, I challenged him on that. But so basically, he knows who they are. He just doesn't want to tell you about it. That's basically what he's saying. There's more.
Hey, Ashraf. Kaya here from Hofmeyer in the Eastern Cape. Greetings to the General as well. I would like to pose one question to the General to say, is he comfortable and happy to campaign and present his manifesto of his political party, UDM, whilst there are people in the former Transkei that are still living in dire straits? Is he comfortable? Can he really call himself a real leader to be reckoned with? Thank you.
All right, so do not forget, we will chat. I'll read some of your WhatsApps just now, text WhatsApps that is. We will chat to General Bantu Holomisa from the UDM coming up later. As part of that feature, we have the election monitor. So there's like an hour with him. Really, there's so much to talk about, not just the manifesto, but what you think about it, your chance to ask questions, voice notes, all are welcome. And you can certainly challenge him in terms of the future of that party and why, in fact, do they exist. They don't seem to be making any notes. Have I got it wrong? I mean, where's the growth in the UDM? I don't know, right? But maybe that's an important point that I make, because my next point with my next guest is really important, where we chat to Professor Stephen Friedman about where South Africa is in terms of its democracy and where's that leftist party. Where's the absence after this?
Ready Steady Cook South Africa. The Thriller Minute Daily Treat is sure to spice up your Monday to Friday menu from Monday 18 March at 7 p.m. If you and someone you know think you're ready and steady to cook along the esteemed chefs on this juicy television show, you can WhatsApp the producers on 068-675-2542. Channel your inner 5-star chef with Ready Steady Cook. Weekdays at 7 p.m. only on
The city of Cairo will be divided into two when Zamalek SC confronts their Modern Future. Zamalek strongly believe they are the kings of the city, but Modern Future want to display something special to conquer the Cairo derby. This is the second leg of the CAF Confederation Cup quarterfinal. Catch Zamalek SC versus Modern Future, Sunday 7 April at 9 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag we love it here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
The National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
Right, so let's talk about South Africa, South Africa's democracy, global democracy, leftist parties, rightist parties, where the trends are going. Certainly, Professor Stephen Friedman has got an opinion on that. He's written a piece about it. He's the research professor at the humanities faculty at the University of Joburg. Prof. Friedman, goodness, it's been a long while. So welcome to, in this case here, the National Pulse.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, so you've written a piece about this in terms of your thoughts on democracy and leftist parties and rightists. Give us the overall summation, firstly.
Yeah, I think I write a weekly column for subscribers, and I think what you've done is mixed too. My previous one last week was about how the only choice voters don't have in this election is a left-wing party. And today's column was about the state of democracy in the world. And the point that I was making is that if you look at this year, over 4 billion people around the world will be casting vote in elections, which is the majority of the planet. And that's a huge step forward, because it means that billions of people are being able to elect their leaders, which they were never allowed to do before. But if you have a look at the state of democracy around the world, it's in a lot of trouble, because although we have elections in many countries, and some quite important countries, we have very intolerant governments, who don't like people who are different to them, who think differently to them, and who are trying to suppress them. We even have the prospect in the most powerful country in the world of the re-election of Donald Trump, who said quite openly that he will use the presidency to get his own back on his opponents. So on the one hand, more and more people can vote. On the other hand, democracy itself is in a lot of trouble. And I suggest the reason for that is that for the last 30 years or so, since democracy started spreading around the world, we've actually been offered a form of democracy which largely excludes the people. So in other words, we're allowed to go and vote, but then in between elections, the people are ignored. If you look around the world, you see that very often opinion polls tell us that what citizens want is very different from what politicians are prepared to give.
So let me just interject on that point. I think there's an interesting point you're making. You're saying democracy is in a lot of trouble, right? So to the general person that we may ask, what is democracy? They would say it's the right to vote. So you're suggesting democracy is a lot more than just the right to vote.
Oh, it's a lot more than the right to vote. You can't have a democracy unless you have the right to vote. But democracy basically is the right to take decisions which affect your life. It's to share in decisions which affect your life, and you can't do that unless you have freedom, unless you have the right to speak, the right to organize, and the right to respect. So that if we have a situation in which everybody can vote, but large sections of the population are not accorded that respect, then democracy is in trouble. Now, the biggest democracy in the world is India. And it's a very good example of what I'm talking about, because they have free elections, but then you have a situation where the government is making life almost unbearable for many Muslims simply because they are Muslim. So that is a very good example of the situation in which literally hundreds of millions of people are being denied their basic rights simply because they happen to be adherents of a particular faith. And that cannot possibly be democratic. I mean, if you look at the intolerance of freedom of speech, people clamping down on the right to express yourself. I mean, this is a problem in many democracies around the world. And you can't really have a functioning democracy unless people's rights are respected and unless people are able to speak their mind.
Well, so if then democracy is in a lot of trouble, as per your initial comment, right, and for the reasons you've just given, right, you still want people to vote. I take that. Then what should the focus be on? Is it a replacement for democracy, or is it activism that will get the leaders of the different parties and political parties around the world to rethink how they actually govern when they get into positions of power?
Absolutely. This is the second one. Voting is essential. As I said, you can't have a democracy without a free vote. But we need to press politicians into understanding that that's just the beginning of the process. If they don't listen to people, then they're not Democrats. If they don't respect the people who live in the territories they govern, they're not Democrats. If they don't allow free speech to the people who oppose them, they're not Democrats. So I think you put it rather well. The second point is citizens need to demand a fuller form of democracy. Everybody listening to this is a human being with rights, and you are entitled to a say. And if the politicians won't give you a say, then they're not governing democratically.
And I mean, in that light, we've certainly seen a flood of protests around the world for a whole range of issues, isn't it? From issues around global warming. You mentioned issues in India. There's been this flood of protests for the state of Palestine against the Israeli government. We've seen many of that around the world, all of them working outside of traditional political spaces, isn't it?
Yes, and the reason for that is that in many cases you find, and Palestine's a particularly good example because quite a lot of opinion polls have been conducted on it, you find that what the people want and what the politicians are prepared to give are totally different. So people are saying, you ignore us when we cast our votes. So therefore we will have to express ourselves in other ways, which they're perfectly entitled to do in a democracy. But, the politicians need to get the message. If you're not listening to the people, don't be surprised if the number of people voting each time drops, which is what's happening in most democracies.
What role then does the media, and I have to say that being on a media platform, what role does the media play in delivering the type of democracy activism that you allude to?
Look, I think my general criticism of the media, certainly not only in this country, in many democracies, is that they don't it becomes the media and the politicians kind of reinforce each other. The media only reports of what is of interest to the politicians, and it becomes a sort of situation in which what you read in the media makes sense to the politicians and the people in the media, but it may not actually reflect the lives of most people. So I think it's very important that, these are old principles in journalism. Don't take at face value what you're told by the politicians. Look beneath the surface. Go out there and find out what's actually happening on the ground. I think if our journalism did more of that around the world, then our democracies would be a lot stronger.
All right, let's then move on to the two articles. So we get to the other article now about South Africa's absence of a formidable leftist party. And give me your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think it's what interests me, and that's why I wrote that particular article, is that, our ruling party, the governing party, its vote is dropping. We all know that, and there's speculation that it may drop below 50%. And as a result of that, we're seeing a whole lot of parties emerging, which is what you would expect in a situation like this, new parties who are trying to fill the gap. What we don't see is the left-wing party. And by that I mean very clearly, you can argue about exactly what it means, but a party whose main focus is inequality. A party whose main focus is to say, look, some people have too much and some people have too little, many people have too little, and we need to address that in whatever way you want to address that. And we don't really have that, and that's a problem. It's a problem whether you're left-wing yourself or not, because it means that we don't have an economic debate which takes into account the needs of most citizens. And it means that, a lot of the issues we should be discussing, we aren't discussing because there's a very narrow band of opinion. Nobody is questioning inequality. Nobody is questioning what many would see as unfairness, where many people can.
So you're saying, Prof. Friedman. So you're saying none of the parties, the existing parties, are questioning the issues of equality and inequality even in the run-up to this election?
No, they're not. Look, there are two types of equality. Okay, there are parties who are questioning what they see as racial inequality, and it's pretty obvious who those parties are. They're saying that black people are still discriminated against, which is obviously their right to say in a democracy. But parties who are saying, look, poor people need a better deal. We need less inequality. I mean, just to give you one example, Ashraf, which I found fascinating. Since COVID, most South Africans have been in a massive cost of living crisis where they are battling to meet their needs. And how much of this is debated politically? I mean, occasionally the politicians talk about it, but most of the time, the economic realities which people are dealing with daily, battling to put food on the table for their families, is not a huge issue of political debate. So the most important concern for most people in this country is not something the politicians want to talk about.
I may well put that question to General Bantu Holomisa when we speak to him, by the way, just after the news. In fact, we're on to news time now. Is there one thing you'd like to ask him, like in 5 seconds or 10 seconds? Just one question to him?
Well, I'd like to know what he thinks we ought to do about poverty. I'd like to know that of any politician in this country.
I'm going to raise it. Thanks for your time, Professor Stephen Friedman. Appreciate it. Feel free to, by the way, tweet out to the X platform as well as Facebook that piece or the pieces you've written. I certainly would gladly share them as well. Fascinating indeed. Let's get the news headlines. The news, in fact, now. It's Madupi Makhalamele.
Thank you very much, Mr. Garda. The top stories this hour: moves to help restore the Port of Durban, and findings into Temintil's death are revealed. A very good afternoon. President Cyril Ramaphosa says he has formed a eThekwini working group to help restore the Port of Durban to its former glory. He was speaking at the official opening of Newland PX Terminal, Africa's largest multimodal rail. The terminal will welcome cargo transported by sea and road to reduce congestion on the N3 highway between the country's two economic hubs, Durban and Joburg. It will also address cargo backlogs at the port. Ramaphosa says The group has also been tasked to reposition the eThekwini municipality.
Challenges that are given rise to by how the municipality works, and all those are now going to be addressed through the collaboration and cooperation at the presidential eThekwini working group, with all of us working together. And I've said that I want this group to report back to me every 3 weeks to tell me exactly how we are repositioning eThekwini, how we are addressing the challenges in Durban Port.
Former National Assembly Speaker Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula, through an affidavit, says the case against her is politically motivated. She says the state's case is based on a single witness and has questioned the timing of the prosecution. She appeared before the Pretoria Magistrates Court facing 12 counts of corruption and was released on 50,000 rand bail. Mapisa-Nqakula is accused of soliciting bribes worth 4 million rand from a defense contractor during her tenure as the defense minister. She says the case against her is aimed at humiliating her. Her legal counsel, Advocate Graham Kerr-Phillips, read out her affidavit.
The Sunday World reported the present ANC Chief Whip, Ms. Penny Marjandina, has said that I had to be charged so that the ANC could effect the so-called step-aside rule, resulting in my being removed as Speaker of the National Assembly. A leaked message had alleged that Ms. Marjandina was at the centre of the leakages and abuse of state power to humiliate and embarrass the Speaker, that is, me. There is a suggestion of political motive for the prosecution against me, given the step-aside rule and the timing of the prosecution.
A report into the death of pupil Latoya Temilton states that the Queenswood primary management team and educators compromised on the safety of the learners. The grade 7 learner from the Pretoria school tragically lost her life in January this year during a school leadership camp. Gauteng Education disclosed the independent report on Temilton's drowning. The director at Nchupetsang Attorneys, Mishak Nchupetsang, who was commissioned to investigate the circumstances surrounding the incident, says the school neglected to specify what the swimming activity would entail in the letters that went out to the parents.
So therefore there was no indication as to whether there will be lifeguard on site in relation to the swimming. So therefore our recommendation there is that the relevant SMT and educators be charged as well in terms of those regulations, because they really compromised on the safety of the learners.
Analysts say that South Africa is nowhere near ending violent crime and the utilization of guns due to the easy access of firearms. 28 people are reported to have died in police shootouts in KZN since the start of the year. Yesterday, the police shot 9 suspects wanted in connection with a series of violent crimes. Criminologist Professor Kholofelo Rakubu says although she applauds the Provincial Police Commissioner on the approach to deal with crime, she wishes that they could urgently establish a specialized firearms unit or deploy a gun violence prevention strategy. She says for that to happen, the SAPS and the justice system need to be strengthened.
We need that the politics of crime be efficiently attended to. When now resources come into place, don't put a paper on the table and not beef it up with the necessary resources, finances. Municipalities need to budget efficiently and incorporate issues of safety in their IDPs, because now as they talk manifestos, they are promising so much in safety, yet after elections, they don't even remember what they promised when it comes to safety.
And aid groups working in Gaza have demanded that the Israeli army improve and adhere to security procedures aimed at keeping their workers safe. This as pressure grows on Israel over the deaths of 7 aid workers killed in an airstrike on Monday. The BBC's Yolanda Nell has more.
The drone attack, which killed 7 aid workers, including 3 Britons, has shone a spotlight on the dangers facing relief organisations as they try to avert a man-made famine in Gaza. The UN agency UNRWA told the BBC that 3 of its convoys had come under attack in recent months without casualties, despite coordinating their movements with Israeli forces. Countries whose citizens were killed in Monday's airstrike have voiced strong criticism. Australia's Prime Minister said Israel's explanation for the deaths was not good enough, while Poland said there should be compensation paid to the victims' families.
The top story at 5, President Cyril Ramaphosa says he has formed a eThekwini working group to help restore the Port of Durban to its former glory. For SAFM News, Kemudupi Makhalemele.
Coming up in your sports this hour, Liverpool and Manchester United in action tonight. All eyes on Blitzboks bid for redemption in Hong Kong and Saudi Arabia to host WTA finals for the next 3 years. More details at 5:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Heavy backlogs on Joburg's N1 South today. It's a breakdown before Winnie Mandela. Traffic is clogged all the way back into the Buccleuch interchange. That's a heavy one to 4 ways. Also a breakdown on the N1 North at Olifantsfontein. All lanes are open there, but onlooking with peak volumes means a delay heading from Buccleuch all the way through to that Olifantsfontein exit. A crash further up on the N1 at the R21. That is pushing traffic back through and beyond Buerta Avenue and looking quite heavy. The Mopani Highway, big queues today from Eskia and Patheli all the way around the bend up onto Theo Martin's, the R80, back in the traffic reports for all the wrong reasons today. It is a super heavy one. Durban, everything where it should be. No major problems. The section between Umghetto and Spaghetti Junction moving okay, and not as bad as it can be sometimes on the N3 out towards Pinetown. It looks all right through the construction. Cape Town, no traffic lights on the R300 at the AZ Berman Stock Road off-ramp at Mitchell's Plain. So again, another heavy one from Delft as you head down.
Pulse is boiling over.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda. The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda.
Well, what's the phrase? The general's in the house, almost in the house. We're going to connect to General Bantu Holomisa pretty shortly. The president of the UDM. We've got him for, well, in fact, we got him right up to 6 o'clock as part of what we call the election monitor. We've been doing this every Thursday, remember, even before my time, and I hope you can enjoy all of this. So, questions for General Holomisa, you can do that via WhatsApp. And in the WhatsApp in text or voice note 0614 104 107. You can call in, not quite now, I'll give you a chance. 086 000 2032. 086 000 2032. By the way, I asked a question earlier on about load shedding, and I'm interested in how you're coping without load shedding. It's been since before the Easter weekend. So by my reckoning, what's it? 7 days, 8 days, 9 days? I can't count. But how are you coping without load shedding? Are you getting used to that? Life without load shedding is like a snapshot of an ideal world. If you have a thought on that, let me know. I know as I talk to you, like the ominous clouds are like, Ashraf, do not even talk about load shedding. When you're not being load shed, the rule of the thumb is just shut up. Just keep quiet. Don't tell anybody about it. Don't tell Eskom that there's no load shedding. Maybe they've forgotten about it. Just whatever. But anyway, tell me how you're coping with the relative calm around the fact that you've had no load shedding nationwide since just about before the Easter weekend. Right, so as I've told you for the better part of the next 45 minutes or so, leading up to 6 o'clock, it's all about General Bantu Holomisa. Let me also remind you, this show is called The National Pulse. And I'll emphasize why it's called that, because, it's been renamed, new presenter, everything's all different here. Well, we want to reflect, on the one hand, the pulse of the nation in terms of the people and what you feel. And that's why my conversations and engagements with you, I think, are particularly important. So I welcome that, on the one hand. On the other hand, we also want to reflect the reality in terms of the things that matter to you. Uppermost, of course, is, the right to vote, the right to express yourself, service delivery, to be able to live the life that you and your family will feel like, hey, cool, it's a great privilege to live in South Africa. And that means everything must check out. Now, I know I've heard on the news the issues about gang violence and guns, and that as a contributor to violent crime in the country. Just yesterday, a footballer from Kaizer Chiefs losing his life. I mean, it's just horrific. So that's one part of it. But I can extend that to hospitals, public hospitals, to education, to all other aspects of South African life. Water, we know, is a big issue. And, as we reflect that, at the same time, I talk about this dream of building a champion nation. How far are we on all of that? But all of that conversation is what we reflect in the national pulse. So the question to you right now is like, what's your pulse like? Do you have the finger on the pulse? What's your pulse rate like? And where do you think South Africa's pulse rate like? It's a question I'll probably put through to my guest, General Bantu Holomisa, the leader of the UDM, and the General is with us via Zoom, I gather. Good chatting to you. Good afternoon and welcome to the National Pulse.
Good afternoon to you, and also good afternoon to our listeners.
Thank you. Well, so what is like your pulse rate like in the build-up to an election, considering it's now less than 2 months away?
Well, we are campaigning like other political parties. And of course, one has to sort of do some touch-ups here and there and engage the voters in different formats of communication.
And I mean,
so I'm relaxed.
Well, I'm glad that you are relaxed. I mean, there's a lot we're going to talk about today, but I just want to reflect before we get into what the UDM stands for, right? And that, it's a significant election, going back 30 years ago in terms of your position, first with the Transkei government at that time, as the country changed, and then your role in terms of where it is now. How do you see this election in broad speak, in its significance for the people of South Africa?
Well, the voters of this country, we must say they have experienced some progress here and there, but there have been a lot of disappointments, and they feel that this is an opportunity for them to correct the wrongs we have been witnessing. One of those is what we have identified is that the public seems to be a gap between it and the government, in the sense that whenever they ask for solutions, the government is nowhere to be found. And sometimes they resort to protests, and guess what? The government would send police or Begikele. You hardly see a line functioning department or minister going to attend if people are calling for water or calling for housing. Instead, they will send police to tear gas them, or they send Begikele to extinguish fire. So there is therefore a big gap which has developed between the communities and their government. So the voters, therefore, would try and make sure that this time around, they must never, ever again put all their eggs in one basket. One-party dominance we have experienced, it breeds corruption. Today we don't have a speaker.
But do you think that's the case? I mean, you see, some may say that corrupt people breeds corruption as opposed to one-party dominance. What has happened maybe there needs to be a change of the people who are part of that party. The flip side of that would be that multi-parties where they can't get a 50% majority, that certainly bleeds the absence of service delivery because there's just an inability of parties to work together, as we've seen with failed coalitions in this country. Particularly, I'm looking at the city of Joburg, I'm looking at Tshwane, I'm looking at Ekurhuleni. There's been issues in many of the major macros that are on failed service delivery because of coalitions.
Well, if there is a political willingness on the part of the leaders to work together, they will avoid what we've witnessed at local government level. We must also remember that we are not inventing a wheel here or reinventing or whatever. Previously, we have had a similar situation of a government, true government of national unity, and there was stability. So at least at national level, I'm confident that a coalition government will work. And also the beauty about this is that no one party dominance will be experienced again, because the tendency is that that one party dominance, it affects even the powers of our institutions, such as Public Service Commission. We've seen how Luthuli House, for instance, have hijacked the powers of the public service and ended up deploying people who are incompetent. We have also seen how the ministers have usurped the powers of the accounting officers, where the DGs are just being used as doorkeepers, but the instructions normally or directives, which are mostly laced with corruption, comes from the political heads of the departments instead of them doing an oversight of such departments.
Okay, carry on.
But for them to say tender X must be given to so-and-so, during the government of national unity, you wouldn't see that. And I'm sure once you have other parties at national level running South Africa, that will be a thing of the past. We have seen how coalitions have worked in other countries. So I'm not worried about that at all.
So we'll talk about, key components. I mean, we can't run through the whole manifesto, but certainly key components of the UDM's position with going into the election, right? But let me just stay with the coalition for the moment because it's so important and topical. You're saying you're very confident that it will work. So, A, why are you so confident? And B, how do you see it playing out? Now, I know I've tweeted already about the fact that now when you vote, you have to actually vote for the party that you ideally support, but also keeping in mind that the party you support will take your vote and vote in a coalition. So there's this unique conundrum we've never had in a democracy in this country before. So how do you see that playing out?
Well, the coalitions will work because at national level, at least, because the ANC, when we pushed it out of the big metros, they published a circular amongst their structures to say they must render all these metros ungovernable. And I think they have succeeded in doing that. Full stop. Second part of the issue of coalitions is that if you go to a coalition with a view to get a post for a position for yourself or your colleagues, we are going to miss the point. We should be sitting around the table, those parties which have agreed to talk, to negotiate, and compare each party's manifestos with a view to integrate those manifestos so that if, for instance, you bet on a wicket of anti-corruption, you will unpack what you mean by that. If you represent the poor of the poorest, you will also be accommodated. If you are representing the rich people or whatever, up higher rich people, that also must be accommodated. So I don't have any problem.
Mm-hmm. Let me then ask you this, right? I mean, it's with respect, it's certainly unlikely that the UDM is actually going to win this next election with a 50+1. And therefore, the point I want to know is who then will you go into coalition with? But in fact, maybe hold that thought. Let's get that thought right after this.
Gautrain is for the legends who make moves to save and pay from as little as 40 Rand from Sandton to Rhodesfield. It's for the bozzers who switch off the geyser when no one's home. And for our clever who get that there's food at home means exactly that. So when it comes to travel, make moves that save and pay from as little as 40 Rand from Sandton to Rhodesfield Station. Gautrain, for people on the move.
Aston Villa have found comfort on the top half, and they want maximum points to retain their decent position.
Put it back, and this time, Zaniolo is on! The equaliser belongs to Aston Villa!
Yet the Bees want to cause havoc and deprive the Villains by registering an away victory.
Wixon tried one of them in the first half, he's finished it in the second, and Brentford have turned this round.
This is the Premier League. Catch the exciting clash between Aston Villa FC and Brentford FC on Saturday, 6 April at 3 p.m. Live on SABC 3. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
Top Sport with Michael Abramson.
Well, a roller coaster of a ride in the DStv Premiership for Kaizer Chiefs, losing at home to Stellenbosch by 1-0.
I'm a Pirates fan, but as things are in Chiefs got a very big problem. It's not about the coaches. It's like they are just keeping on changing the coaches, taking this one and bringing another one, and then taking that. Just like hiring and firing every time. There is no positive results coming out. So the problem is deep down. Chiefs must look deep. Don't just see fire the coach, hiring and firing. That doesn't help.
Top Sport on SAFM. X at SAFM Radio and at Ashraf Garda.
And the show is called The National Pulse because we really want to connect and feel the pulse of the nation. And right now the pulse of the nation is a bit restless in the build-up to the election coming up 29th of May, right? My guest as part of just that is what we call the Election Monitor, which we do every Thursday. My guest is the leader of the UDM, General Bantu Holomisa. And there's a couple of important issues. There's lots of people wanting to comment. I will certainly open the lines for that as well just now. And others are sending WhatsApp voice notes, and that's fine too, or text, and we'll get to those. All people are, tweeting out on our X platform, and you can do that too. We'll certainly look at that in a few minutes' time. I want to pick up about the issue of the coalition. Firstly, General Holomisa, that asked you, so practically you're not likely to win the election. I don't think so, right? Statistics suggest that, but you have the right to enter into a coalition. So at this point in time, you've made the point that you will sit around the table and look at similarities. But are there parties that you would discard from being part of any coalition that you're a part of? And you can tell us that emphatically right now. Or are there parties that you definitely will already sit with no matter what because you see that joint vision?
The United Democratic Movement will not put preconditions as to which party will work with, other than that we will be guided by the results of the election. Second, I see that there will be three mainstreams in these elections. After the election results, people who would sit around the table. Firstly is the tripartite alliance, which is led by the ANC, and the second stream would be a DA-led stream called Multi-Party, which was at the beginning called Moonshot. And then you have another grouping which will be more or less on the left of the ANC. This is where you are going to see the bargain and display of maturity by all those parties, because at the end of the day, they represent a certain interests of the population of South Africa. But the judgment here, when we look at it, one must not be a partisan when you attend to issues of that. Non-partisan approach will take us out of this mess we are in. And if we say, let us focus on solving the problems of economy, crime, joblessness, and so on, collective, then we might save, or rather recapture the lost ground, because we have lost a lot of ground since 1994. In the first 5 years of Madiba, we started very well. We're highly respected internationally, and the investors were confident. But I can't say of the same today.
Okay, so to confirm, I mean, no conditions for now until after the election with any of the parties. But do you then see yourself as part of that left grouping, left of the ANC?
I will work with anyone as long as that individual is prepared to accommodate us on what we are selling to South Africans right now. One of those things is that there is nowhere that we can continue in the next 30 years to allow or to call for black South Africans, 57 million of them, to go and queue to get jobs from companies which are owned by 3 million white population. We will have to do what the Afrikaners did when they took over from the English people, and that is the role of the state in building the economy must be clear, and we should not be ashamed to say we are going to invest in the youth of South Africa to make sure that we build future wealth creators, people who are going to create jobs, and remove this mentality that if one has graduated, he must go and look for a job. Rather, to say the kid who graduates says, I want to start my own business. I've got skill for. What is needed, therefore, would be what kind of sector banks you want to establish, or a national fund, in order to sustain those who want to be industrialists.
Well, it's interesting you raised it at a time. I mean, you know, the 500 medical doctors unemployed in KZN. It's a story we covered yesterday, right? Are you suggesting that there must be a massive drive towards, you know, entrepreneurship? And you've got about a minute to discuss to answer that before we get to news. But how practically do we do that?
The answer is a big yes, and the way of doing it would be to look at your budget first and start talking about prioritization, and also close the gaps where, for instance, the Auditor General in this country always tells us over 40-50 billion rands is going down the drain. That money could have been channeled through right programs if you had competent civil servants.
That would change. Well, I'll tell you what, corruption is one of the big issues I know as part of your manifesto, and I'm going to raise that with you, General Bantu Holomisa. We will do that in a moment. Let's get the news headlines now. It's just gone 5:30. Here's Madupi.
Thank you very much, Ndate Garda. In your headlines, SABC Group CEO Nomsa Chabedi says the public broadcaster had to dig deep to fund the 6% wage hike implemented last year, despite the company's financial losses in the period. President Cyril Ramaphosa says he has formed a eThekwini working group to help restore the port of Durban to its former glory. And Myanmar's main pro-democracy resistance group, the National Unity Government, says its armed wing has launched a massive drone attack on the capital of Myanmar, Naypyidaw, targeting the main military headquarters and the Air Force Base. Details of these and other stories coming up 6 o'clock.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Still very slow down to four ways today on Joburg's northern run. It's a breakdown at the Winnie Mandela off-ramp. The traffic queues effectively from about the Yatskate River Bridge on the M1 South in Midrand into Buccleuch and then all the way down to the Winnie Mandela off-ramp. Big traffic as well heading north in Pretoria. There's been a crash on the N1 north between the R21 and Rigel Avenue. That traffic's heavy all the way back through Borta and back towards John Foster Drive. The Mopani Highway, for those heading up to Shoshinguve, that's big today. That starts at Eski and Pafeli, goes all the way up into Theo Martin, so very heavy out around the Bend area. Durban, the Higginson Highway going into Havenside, Chatsworth direction, that's a busy one today. And Cape Town, after an earlier crash on the N2 outbound at the M5, things just taking a while to recover. And Nelson Mandela Boulevard, Philip Kosala, still very slow out to Hospital Bend. The main road going out through Observatory quite slow. And a lot of traffic around Woodstock and Salt River. Victoria Road outbound, Albert Road to the Circle at Salt River, and then pick up Voortrekker Road dreadfully slow in towards the Maitland area. The other issue is still no traffic lights as you off-ramp the R300 at Stock Road. That's causing a delay from the N2 highway going along that R300 towards the Mitchells Plain off-ramp. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Kapele.
Right, so there's a big game coming up tomorrow, right? Tell me about that to me.
Yes, it's Banyana versus Nigeria, and Banyana's returning defender, Bambanani Mbani, says that tomorrow's all-important Olympic first leg of the last qualifier against Nigeria is very personal. Mbani, who has just returned from a long injury layoff, which she sustained in last year's FIFA Women's World Cup in New Zealand and Australia, says that they fired up for this game. Banyana have won 4 of their last 5 meetings against Nigeria. And Mbani says that she knows that the Super Falcons will come out guns blazing for this game. Meanwhile, Liverpool take on Sheffield United tonight as they look to keep up with Arsenal and stay ahead of Manchester City in the race for the Premier League title. However, they'll have to play the game at Anfield with the number of injured players. 8 players, to be exact, are said to be unavailable, with 2 players returning, but another a doubt after Sunday's win. And just today, Jurgen Klopp, who is the manager of the club, confirmed that Curtis Jones will make a return to the squad, having missed the last 4 Premier League games with an ankle injury. Then there's another match which Ashraf and I will definitely have a keen interest in. Chelsea hosting Manchester United, and the Bulls will be looking to extend their unbeaten run to 6 games, while the Red Devils will definitely be looking for some sort of hope when it comes to finishing in the top 4, because their weekend showing dealt a serious blow to their chances of challenging for the top 4 spots.
I thought it was Man United trying to keep up to keep up with Brighton. But anyway, forget that. Let's move on.
Then on to rugby. The Springbok Sevens team face one of their toughest tasks as a tournament, or at a tournament rather, that traditionally hasn't been their best at the Hong Kong Sevens this weekend. Other than still not qualifying for the Olympics, they face a repage tournament for the final spot for Paris in May. The Blitzboks finished 11th in Los Angeles, their lowest finish in a number of seasons, prompting action from SA Rugby. The Dolphins in cricket head into the last part of the CSA T20 Challenge with some big matches ahead of starting tomorrow when they face the Lions at the Wanderers. Currently sitting in 4th on the table, the Dolphins can make big strides towards that home semi-final should they claim a few more wins in the second half of the tournament. And with a match tomorrow and Sunday, the Dolphins will hope to back 2 wins, which will move them up the table into a position of strength. And on Sunday, they take on the Dragons. Ending things off with motorsport, Ferrari's Carlos Sainz says that he wanted to speed up talks with Formula One teams for a seat next season and hoped to resolve his future sooner than later. Now, the only driver to have beaten dominant Red Bull since 2022, with his most recent victory coming in Australia last month, Sainz is being replaced by 7 times world champion champion Lewis Hamilton at the end of the season. And he told reporters ahead of Sunday's Japanese Grand Prix that he was talking to various teams because that's what his management team and himself should do when he doesn't have a job for next year. On that note, it is a wrap from my side. For SAFM Sport, ke nna Tumi Nkgapele, Modimo ke yo.
The city of Cairo will be divided into two when Zamalek SC confronts their Modern Future. Zamalek strongly believe they are the kings of the city, but Modern Future want to display something special to conquer the Cairo derby. This is the second leg of the CAF Confederation Cup quarter-final. Catch Zamalek SC versus Modern Future, Sunday 7 April at 9 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. # We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
Right, we're going to chat. We're continuing to chat to General Bantu Holomisa as part of our election monitor. We do that every Thursday. So really important conversation. I'll get to some of the calls just now. There's WhatsApp voice notes as well. I've not forgotten about them. Absolutely not. However, let's first talk about the money issues that are so important that drives the economy with the Money Web Market Update with Jimmy Moyahi.
Good afternoon, Aldrin. Good afternoon, Dumi, and good afternoon to the listeners. Yes, we've got quite an interesting show coming up on.
And you can call me Aldrin.
A little later
you can call me Aldrin right through the day. Jimmy? You can call me Aldrin. You can call me Aldrin right through. Then I will not tell you that your chat with Shweshwe was so good last night because I really enjoyed it. Go ahead. I really enjoyed that conversation, by the way.
Thank you.
Really,
you very
really
much.
good. Okay.
It's quite a good segment for us to get to know CEOs outside of the office work that they do. So hopefully we can continue to get to know some CEOs around the country around in that space. But on today's show, we're taking a look at the latest developments from the Pick n Pay franchisee story. I covered the story a couple of weeks ago. Pick n Pay franchisee took Pick n Pay to court. We're going to speak to Norman Goodfellow, the CEO, around that as well. And then I've got a conversation with a lovely SME who's started a company called Kitchen 360. We do our SME of the Week features every Thursday. We're going to speak to her and just get a sense of what the business looks like and what she gets up to there. And then I'm looking at an interesting story. We know that we've been going through various rabbit holes regarding the Steinhoff saga, and the latest rabbit hole that I'm diving into is related to the funds that were frozen on behalf of, or frozen by the South African Reserve Bank as part of a preservation order back in 2021, that there is a particular lady by the name of Berdine Odendaal who has access to these funds, or who owns these bank accounts, and those funds were frozen because of her association with the late Marcus Jooste. So we're going to dig into that, try and unpack what's happening there, because the Reserve Bank at some point was paying out 150,000 Rand on a monthly basis to Ms. Odendaal. Now they are not. She wants the monies to continue coming towards her, and we're just going to look into that. It might take a bit of time to get to the bottom of it, but we'll certainly keep up with that story there. But before we get to that, the markets have had a really good day today. Surprisingly, resources are leading the charge there as well, and Henke Krier has been keeping an eye on the markets for us throughout the day. He joins me now to just give us a quick summary of those markets. Good afternoon, Henke. Thanks as always for keeping an eye on the markets. Resources leading the charge and the Rand being fairly stable, but oil prices still near $90.
Hello, Jimmy. Yes, you're absolutely right. Good evening to you and to Ashraf and to me, and good evening to all the listeners. Look, it was lovely to have such a nice green screen the whole day, because it's not every day that you have such a lovely green market like you did today. I mean, in the US at this moment, we see the Dow Jones, the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ trading about 0.8% stronger Don't know where that's going to end, but it looks good. And then European stocks, they finished also in the green with the FTSE 100 and the DAX each about 0.4% up, and the CAC 40 gaining 0.1% today. And then the JSE had a great day. It finished 1.7% stronger at a higher level of 75,373 points. Then the industrial index gained 0.8%. The financial index finished 1.8% stronger. And like you say, that resources index finishing 3.4% stronger, almost gaining 3.5% today. Anglo assisted with this because Anglo also finished 3.5% stronger. Then FirstRand gained 2.7%, and Glencore finished the day 1.5% up. Other companies enjoying a lovely day were Montauk Renewable Energy, which gained 16%. Then Implats finished 10% stronger today, followed by Sibanye-Stillwater, which gained 9.5% today. Other mining companies like Northam finishing 7% up. And then there's also the MTN Group and Mondi. They each gained 6%. And lastly, South32 finishing 5.5% stronger. One or two companies that didn't have such a great day, like AVI, which lost 3.6%, and Oceana and Mr. Price. They each lost 1% today. Then the commodities market, the price of gold, literally going for gold again, now trading at $2,295 an ounce. Silver is sitting at $27.10, platinum $940, and palladium $1,032 per ounce. The price of Brent crude, like you said, Jimmy, still a bit high to my liking, way too high, $89.20 a barrel. But the rand looking up today, and a little bit better against the US dollar, now paying 18 Rand 65 for a US dollar, then 23 Rand 62 for a pound, 20 Rand 26 for a euro, and 12 Rand 34 for an Australian dollar. Bitcoin still maintaining its level of $67,700, and that is 1.3 million Rand. Jimmy, that's how the markets performed today.
Thank you so much for that update, Henku. We're going to be keeping an eye on the oil price. I'd be very interested to see where we end up on the oil price as we get closer to our May election date, and whether or not we'll actually see an a petrol price cut in the start of May. But we'll dig into those and other stories just after 6. For now, Ashraf, back to you and the team.
Ashraf Garda on SAFM.
Yeah, and this show is called The National Pulse, and what better way to get a feel of the pulse of the nation, but then speaking to political leaders in the build-up to the election on May 29. My guest is General Bantu Holomisa, the leader of the UDM. General Holomisa, welcome back again. Now, when we stopped, we spoke about the coalitions, that's done. Let's talk about a key issue for you, I know, the issue of corruption. Where does your party stand on it? But very importantly, where does it stand with regards to eliminating corruption from the South African fibre?
Well, in our small way, we have been betting on a wicket of anti-corruption, promoting ethics of good governance. We have succeeded in a number of cases. We can start from, for instance, from the time we told the chairperson of IEC to pack and go. Indeed, she was shown the door. We also did the same thing when we exposed that the money of the pensioners who used to work for the government have been taken away from the service, from the asset managers like Alexandra Forbes, Sanlam, Old Mutual, and so on, and put under the GEPF. And GEPF appointed PIC. Then it turned out that PIC was nothing else but a piggy bank for the comrades in corruption. Hence, you see some of them are millionaires and billionaires and using the pensioners' monies. It is the UDM again, which said if we can allow the members of parliament to continue with this floor crossing legislation, because a corrupt system, it has to go. is no longer in our statute books today. It was the same UDM, if you recall, which said the party funding legislation must be introduced in South Africa. We said it from as early as 1999. ANC and DA, as you know, blocked that, but later on, they saw the light. Today we have that legislation. Yes, it was the UDM again, which said there's no way that SAA can be sold for 51 rands. And we wrote to the SCOPA as well as Public Enterprise Portfolio Committees in Parliament. Yes, that deal has been struck off. Yes, it is the UDM again, which as early as 2021 blew a whistle to say this Minister of Defense has erred insofar as we are concerned after we got a tip-off. But today, where is she? So we have been consistent on all those issues and many others. So we have no problem in working with in a government where we say, let the politicians do the oversight job, not to dish out or allocate tenders to their friends.
And how have you been able to do that, General Holomisa, considering that your party is a relatively small party? I mean, you've got 2 seats in Parliament, I understand, and yet the points you've raised, I mean, they're all very, very admirable. So how have you been able to do that when far larger parties have not been able to succeed in raising the consciousness of the country?
Well, I'll credit that to the background I had. Remember that when I was the head of Transkei government, I used the same tactics of protecting the citizens of the country, of Transkei then, and saying those who are implicated, their fate would be decided by the courts and not by the military government. And we restored the dignity of that region. So, in a way, we are more focused on looking at the quality as opposed to quantity. What can you tell me the 268 members of Parliament of ANC has done in the last 28 years or 30 years? Or what we are witnessing is nothing else but it has been a looting spree period where the resources which were supposed to have fixed the roads, create jobs, then they ended up in the pockets of certain individuals.
And on that point, I mean, you made the point early on in our conversation about the ANC, and you've seen a memo where deliberately the municipalities must be undermined to be collapsed. I mean, I haven't seen that memo. Can you share that with us? I mean, that's one of the listeners are saying as well. Can you share that with us?
Well, I will have to go to our archives. But in 2016, I coordinated the meeting of all opposition parties after the local government elections. And we added numbers and we took a decision to push the ANC out of the metros. And in this way, what I preached to them was that local government must be depoliticized. So we are not going to talk about ideologies here, but we want services to the people. And indeed, we succeeded in pushing the ANC out of in Johannesburg, in Gauteng metros, Nelson Mandela Bay, and so on and so on. So we are talking here about, you are talking to someone who has practically been there and being involved. So I don't have a problem at all.
Let's talk about service delivery. I mean, it's absolutely key to to how South Africans feel about South Africa, right? Because that's where we are all struggling along the line with. What's your service delivery plan as part of your manifesto?
A service delivery plan, you cannot have it a plan more than tightening the rules of the game. Firstly, each individual must stay in their lanes. Do you have a qualified or competent civil servants? That would mean we need to train them. Currently, you see people being directors, chief directors, even DGs, people who have never even done an induction course for what they are doing. They just come in, and as a result, they are vulnerable to all these consultant vultures who come and do cut and paste of old policies.
So how would you change it? I mean, I hear the problem. How would you change that?
The best is to, first of all, train your civil servants. And you need to read the Riot Act from the word go, that this is how we are going to work. If the budget is allocated, that this, in the next 24 months or so, this is the work we are going to do. Each person must make sure that they are inspectors to make sure that budget is implemented and that the work is being done, and the construction companies are competent to do that kind of work. Not what we see today. You build a 4-room, what you call Vezinha room houses, and then later on, RDP houses. 6 months down the line, this house is not in good condition. Same thing with roads. That means there is no monitoring. And also, what we must also invest on, this is where you can create a lot of jobs for people, or create or employ a lot of people. The maintenance units, which used to maintain the infrastructure of South Africa, including homelands, must be brought back. Move away, slightly away from this thing of everything must be outsourced. It must be sent tenders.
All right, we said we'll take calls. Probably I can take 3 calls max if they're short and sharp. But I can play some WhatsApp voice notes now. So let's play some of them, and then we'll get to General Holomisa to talk about it. I certainly want to touch on the issue of the economy and the issue of poverty, which even Prof. Friedman said we need to talk about poverty in our country. But let's get some voice notes first.
Day Ashraf, Kaya here from Hofmeyer in the Eastern Cape. Greetings to the General as well. I would like to pose one question to the General to say, is he comfortable and happy to campaign and present his manifesto of his political party, UTM, whilst there are people in the former Transkei that are still living in dire straits? Is he comfortable? Can he really call himself a real leader to be reckoned with? Thank you.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. Good afternoon to General there. Here, East London. Just 1 or 2 questions for me. Can you pinpoint why the UDM is not attracting more people, especially young people? Can you tell us why they're failing to do that? Because I like him. He always spit facts. Always on the side of the truth, except failing by lying that he was arrested on that day. Thank you.
Mr. Ashraf, it's me, Kaya, again. General, please explain to the South Africans that what are you pinning your hopes on when it comes to coalitions? Do you want the coalition to save you, to save your face as UTM? Because you will never, as you can see, even projections are saying, you will never govern South Africa as UTM. Now you want to lead by the back door of coalitions. Coalitions themselves who are not able to sustain themselves. In the metros you are claiming you have taken the ANC away from. What do you mean? Why do you mislead South Africans, General, about coalitions? Coalitions are not sustainable.
All right, that's the WhatsApp voice note. It's probably time for one quick call if you want to. Just call in right away. I'll take it. Maybe not. We'll see. General Holomisa, you may just want to respond to those.
Firstly, the Transkei was handed over to New South Africa in 1994. In the last 30 years, what I notice is that infrastructure which the ANC government inherited is collapsing as we speak. So I'm not in government anymore. But what I'm doing is to highlight these problems. If that causes you chest pains, hard luck, my brother. The next question was about the question of the youth. Don't make a mistake. We do have the youth in the UDM. Most of those people are now councillors. Some are graduates from universities. And right now, the deputy president of the UDM, the secretary general of the UDM is 35 years old. He just wrote his master's last November. We have a lot of young people. You will see them in these coming elections. But I must admit that the United Democratic Movement has not invested much on marketing itself by going to big business to look for money.
So why have you not done that? Because, I mean, maybe you can answer this together. The coalition part you've answered already. Because the flip side of this is like the question people have been asking is like, why isn't the UDM with its great track record against corruption, why has it not grown? Like, what's happened to it?
Well, we have failed to market ourselves. I'm admitting it. But you must know also that the people who you are asking money from, most of them are responsible for corrupting these government officials and ministers.
And therefore you will stay away. Let's talk about your thoughts on, and you can link this together, poverty and the economy. Poverty is a huge problem. How do we solve that? We've got about 2.5 minutes to go. So poverty and economy, how do we deal with that?
The issue of the economy is a complex one. You must understand that in the last 30 years, this country has never had a consensus on what kind of macroeconomic policies we should have. Even the tripartite alliance partners always shoot down whatever ANC is bringing up to the public. So we need to sit around the table once more immediately after the elections and try and find a solution together, bring capitalists, bring hardline socialists around the table. So it is the same thing, my brother, who say coalitions are not going to work. It's not by your choice and mine. The voters are going to spread the power amongst South African political parties, whether you like it or not. In that case, if the ANC or any party is not getting to 50+1, then it stands to reason that coalitions are here to stay.
We got a minute. I'm going to move away from coalitions very quickly. What's your plan for poverty, no matter who's in power? How do we move from this poverty-stricken country to meaningful growth? We've got a minute here.
Well, we need to invest more on the agriculture. We need to look at the land we have and start utilizing that land. We need to be creative and making sure that the big business is assisted to create more jobs so that people can have money to buy food and also educate their kids.
And therefore, all things considered, what for you is the USP, the unique selling point of the UDM?
United Democratic Movement has been consistent in promoting and creating awareness that if you misuse taxes of the people, you will never develop this country. Hence, we opted to bet on a wicket of anti-corruption, and we have hit them for 6s and 4s whilst we are occupying that crease. We are still occupying it. We will be occupying it after the elections of 2024. That's UDM.
Okay.
Consistency, what we are doing.
So if you want to fight corruption, then connect with the UDM. That's the message coming from General Bantu Holomisa. 6s and 4s he talks about when dealing with no balls, I would think, especially with no balls. Best wishes for election 2024, General Holomisa. Thank you for your time. And let's see what happens on the 29th of May and beyond. Let's end with the show with this fascinating point from Albert Einstein in the parting shot. We cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them. In fact, that could well be something that General Bantu Holomisa will be saying as well. Great that you're part of the show. Let's connect again tomorrow with the National Pulse and tell me what you're feeling. Do you have the finger on the pulse of the nation? Let's get the news now. It's just gone 6 o'clock with Budupi.
Thank you very much, Ashraf. The top stories this hour. The SABC remains on the recovery path and moves to help restore the Port of Durban. A very good evening. The SABC says it had to dig deeper to fund the 6% wage hike implemented last year, despite the company's financial losses in the period. Group CEO Nomsa Chabedi says the public broadcaster remains on a path to recovery, which requires a focus on maintaining financial viability and addressing liquidity constraints. She says the 6% increase was implemented through a staggered approach wherein